All right, are we all set up?
I am set myself. I don't know about Cody or Jesus with their recording, but the slideshow is set up.
We're good to go.
All right, so welcome everybody to the December 9, 2020 full board meeting of Manhattan Community Board 6. My name is Kyle Thide and I'm the chair of Community Board 6. This meeting is being called to order at 7 p.m. Tonight we are joined by Secretary Seema Shah, District Manager Jesus Perez, Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman, and Community Associate Brendan Burr. In order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, I want to discuss a few ground rules. The first is that no one may speak until granted the floor. Board members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click on the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. Just a reminder, the chat function should not be used for CB6 business or questions about agenda topics. No conversation, side conversation should be taking place in the chat function. Any remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information, such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Once a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. As we all know, we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of this meeting, so please keep questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. For the members of the public who are attending tonight, in lieu of submitting a speaker slip to speak in the public session, you can register to speak in the public session by using the Q&A feature of Zoom. Please post your name, affiliation, and what topic you wish to speak about. This needs to be done by 7:15. Some of you already confirmed with our office to speak. Please still include your name, affiliation, and topic in the Q&A section so that we can ensure that you are here. So the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office, was posted online, and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Board members, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. We will now take attendance by roll call. Board members, you can unmute yourselves and answer present when your name is called.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. Since I will not be able to see you, if you could just, verbally share that you're present, that would be great. Kyle Thide.
Present.
Asia Badi.
Present.
Martin Barrett.
Present.
Elvie Barroso.
Present.
Joan Berenbaum.
Present.
Matt Bondi.
Present.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
Dan Devine. Dan. Beatrice Disma.
Here.
Janine D'Onofrio.
Present.
Rick Eggers.
Here.
Charles Fernandez.
Present.
Andrew Gross.
Present.
Adam Hartke.
Present.
Molly Hollister.
Here.
Paige Judge.
Here.
Yusuf Khalid. Yusuf. John Keller.
Here.
Abigail Cruzmark.
Present.
Anton Mullner. Anton Mullner. Kavita Matthew.
Here.
Sandra McKee.
Here.
Wells Magali. Wells Magali. Richard Mintz.
Here. Present.
Philip Napolitano. Philip Napolitano, Rajesh Nair,
Present.
Kevin O'Keefe,
Present.
Reshma Patel,
Present.
Matthew Roberts,
Present.
Jean Santoro,
Here.
Frank Scala, Lawrence Shayer,
Present.
Ann Seligman,
Here.
Lou Sapersky, Lou, Sean Sherman,
Present.
Sandra Sherrod, Sandra, Letty Simon,
Present.
Susan Steinberg,
Here.
Anju Suresh,
Here.
Mark Thompson,
Here.
Corinne Vanderdonk,
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven,
Present.
Ronnie White, Ronnie, and Claude Winfield.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Seema, this is Yusuf, by the way. I joined late.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Yeah, Seema, same with Dan Devine.
Sounds good. Got
Thank
you
you.
both.
All right, thank you. Are there any other people who joined after the roll call? Okay. And just a reminder, if we can all remain on mute as we speak, I'd greatly appreciate it. So to begin the public session, our office has had conversations with NYU Langone on their work regarding a COVID-19 vaccine. I've invited NYU Langone to come today to speak to us for a couple of minutes on their work. So we are now joined by Dr. Angelica Kotkamp from the Division of Infectious Diseases at the NYU School of Medicine, who will be speaking about NYU Langone's COVID-19 vaccine trials. Dr. Kotkamp, are you here today? Jesus or Cody, do we know if?
She is here. Just give us 1 second.
Okay, perfect.
Why don't we give her a few minutes and while we sort this out and go to the next speaker.
Okay, I see that the doctor is a co-host now. Okay. So I do want to make sure we get this presentation done before we jump into other public comments. All right. So we'll move on to the elected.
Looks like she's ready to speak.
Already? Okay, perfect. Perfect timing.
Looks like there's an audio issue.
Okay, so I'm just going to move on to some of the elected officials. Once we figure out that audio, we can jump back to the doctor's presentation. All right, so holding our meetings over Zoom has allowed us to speak with more of our district elected officials and for them to join our meetings each month, something that we're all very grateful for. So to be respectful of everyone's time and the fact that our electeds do have multiple meetings to attend in a given night, we're asking that the reports be brief and that you refrain from duplicating what other electeds have already said. So first up, can we elevate Councilmember Kalos to a panelist, please? That he can give his report.
He's rejoining as a panelist now.
Okay, perfect.
Give me 1 second. I'm parenting right now.
No problem.
Good evening. Think you can hear me.
Disaster averted. We needed our book.
Perfect. Welcome, council member.
I see the borough president is here. Did she want to go first?
Go ahead, I'm fine.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything. I want to thank this board for taking a principled stand on supporting the homeless and what you've been, and I want to thank your chair for the statement that he put out, and just we work very closely with our borough president, Gail Brewer, to provide additional services, particularly on the east side and parts of the city that we are able to do more and to do our fair share. So I just want to thank you as a board, your board chair, and our borough president. Before Thanksgiving, we had a hearing. The mayor has cut our nonprofits retroactively, and we are demanding that he return the money. At the hearing, I called the mayor a liar because it may be true that the mayor told folks that it was going to be a right sizing when it actually wasn't. Our borough president, Gail Brewer, has been helping on this and trying to get our nonprofits their funding back. Also, just as we were thinking about Thanksgiving, we were thinking about the fact that where other people see a dead city with 10,000 vacant apartments, I see 10,000 vacant apartments that could actually house the 10,000 families in our homeless shelters. Only 10,000, they make up 35,000 New Yorkers, and we could house them in these apartments tomorrow. And just to be honest, we were spending $6,000 a month housing a homeless family in a shelter. And I can tell you that no matter how expensive your neighborhood is, Midtown, Upper East Side, you can get a 2-bedroom for less than $6,000 in this city. We worked with Gail on a letter to get the outdoor dining set. Gail's a sponsor of the legislation, I believe, which we actually passed into law to make outdoor dining permanent. And we're working on making cultural streets available for folks. As we get back to the pandemic and the second wave, we've been fighting with the mayor because he put out a press release saying we had enough N95 masks when we're actually 30 days short of the supply, and dangerously so. We're getting reports of people rationing at public hospitals. If you know, if you are a doctor or a healthcare professional and you are being asked to ration and you do not think you are safe, please reach out to my office, coronavirus@benkalis.com. We will work with you and your institution to get you N95 masks from the stockpile. If you are a city employee, there's a separate stockpile, and we will get you the materials you need, from masks to bodysuits, the gloves. There's no reason anyone should be rationing, and we are working with vendors to try to get locally sourced locations. While we're trying to deal with the whiplash of reopenings and closures, we're not getting the mayor's version of remote learning, which is called Learning Bridges. We worked with the borough president and other elected officials on the east side to get 200 Learning Bridges sites on Roosevelt Island. So if you need Learning Bridges sites, we're working with real estate developers, child service providers, and parent organizations to just get these spaces connected. Gail put in about $750 for a new playground in the neighborhood. We did about 2.5. We have new playgrounds we're opening. And I think those are the big pieces. We have a holiday party coming out, First Fridays. We'd love to help you. And we mentioned this at the borough board, but we'd really love to partner with CB6 to identify cultural institutions, health institutions, nonprofits who could be doing their part for elections. We only have one site in CB6 for early voting. That's not enough. So let's work together. Let's identify locations. Let's force the Board of Elections to open more early vote sites. And I believe you are the folks who can help us make it happen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, council member. I'm actually part of that working group, so thank you for inviting us, and I look forward to the first meeting. Are there any questions for the council member? All right, seeing none. Very easy night for you. Borough President Brewer, would you like to speak now or during the borough president's report?
I'll be quick. I think it'll be just me and nobody else because of time constraints. I know that Brian Lafferty is on. Kyle, thank you. I'll be quick. I do want to hear your doctor. I just want to echo, not to repeat, but Karen was terrific today on the call about the Renwick Hotel. It's going to be a challenge. I think we will all, thanks to the call organized by Councilmember Powers, we will all chip in. I'll just leave it at that to make sure that it's successful if it goes through, and I think it will. The MTA is coming up with hearings. If there's some suggestions in addition to what we are going to be asking for, let us know. Also in transportation, helicopters. And I assume that there are complaints to Jesus Perez and the board as well as others. We have a lot. And way up on 311. Nothing coming out of the heliport in your area or in Board 4's heliport, but New Jersey. They have about 50 heliports, airports, and the helicopters are coming from there. So we're going to meet mid-December with the New York folks, the FAA, the Eastern Helicopter Organization, etc. Then we're going to, in January or February, meet with New Jersey. We've been in contact with all the elected officials in New Jersey. We don't have a lot to stand on. Even Congressman Nadler tried some time ago to work with them, and they're very cooperative, but they don't get the complaints. I have somebody complain the other day. They were running early in the morning in Central Park for 1 hour. Tourism was just hanging over the park, looking at the sun come up. That is from New Jersey. So, and there's a wonderful article, if anybody's interested in Gotham Gazette regarding this topic from Julia Gatillo Martin. She spent time out in New Jersey. So I'm just letting you know something that we're focused on. Again, I've done it before. We're going to keep trying. I think Dan Kills was talking about the childcare seats. Manhattan lost 550 of them. They went to other boroughs. We're now, the city says, oh, we're giving you pre-K. Pre-K is not full day. And so we are fighting to get those back. It's not appropriate. We have plenty of low-income New Yorkers who come to Manhattan to work, who are low income, and we need the Head Start. We need the full day. We do not need just pre-K. So another fight that we're on. Last year, I put in about $50 million for DOE devices. I think I might have mentioned this. We're getting closer, but we still don't have the money. And every single discussion from parents, and every single discussion, whether it's 2, 6, 5, any board, CEC, school discussion is about the lack of devices. So here's $50 million sitting in the bank. We're trying to get it out of DOE, OMB, and SCA. Letters, calls. It has to do with, different ways from a cart. This is an individual device. The kid should be able to take it home. They're working at home. So long story short, we're fighting it. We're going to win. But it's taken 1.5 years just to get the money. After much discussion, I don't even want to get into it. I think I keep talking about this public realm discussion. This is the concept of somebody, perhaps next administration, being in charge of our streets. I've been working with Times Square Alliance, the great Tim Tompkins and others. And again, I think you have been discussing it in your committees, and I would love to get ideas. I did count 24 agencies who work on the streets. I added them all up. I made a list. We'll send you a copy of the letter if you haven't already gotten it that we're sending to the mayor, and we are going to keep focused on it. You know that February 1st, all of the applications for community board for current members, and I hope you reapply as well as new members, are due. We are, despite the challenge with working with past budgets, we move forward with the next capital budget. And we had last night a fabulous discussion with all the schools in Manhattan about how they apply for funding. And we're doing something similar with all the nonprofits who want to be part of an information session tomorrow, December 10th at 11 a.m. It's all on our website or in our newsletter. And I hope you all get our newsletter, because if I say myself, it's very, very good. We are working on an affordable task force for affordable housing. I should say an affordable housing task force, and coming up with some ideas, again, perhaps for the future, but we have to have something very specific as to a goal. And it may not be the top idea for Board 6. So there are 700 hotels in the city, and there are about 63, 64 housing the homeless. That leaves a lot of hotels that are going to be in trouble. Not all, but some. And perhaps it's a silver lining to work with the nonprofit community and the city to purchase some for quality, maybe senior housing. That's a feeling that generally fits with hotels. We also, religious task force we're working on for what can happen to the buildings. Please weigh in on Governor's Island. It's not exactly in your area, but it is the city's area, and I'd love to have your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Borough President Brewer. Are there any questions or comments for the Borough President from our board members or the public?
We do appear to have one. A question from Deborah Ferrone asks whether the borough president is assured that we have the types of provisions for the Renwick that were found missing at the Lucerne site, such as safety and outdoor space.
Deborah was terrific today on the call organized by the council member. And I think, Deborah, thank you. I think I made it clear. You've got to work with the nonprofits in the area. I heard that they were working with one in terms of the street homelessness, but there are others and they need to be part of the discussion. And what I heard about on-site, you heard the same thing, is that people go to the provider, health or otherwise, that they were working with before. I need more information. And also I'd like to know specifically, aren't there more events, more programs on site? That's what worked at the Lucerne. On-site programs in collaboration with neighborhood organizations. In fact, I mean, Guided Riverside on the west side came through. They are paying 40 full-time jobs as a result of the effort. And if the mayor hadn't been so whatever, they would have done more. So I hope that answers your question and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Borough President. I do not see any other questions or comments. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we move on, is Dr. Kottkamp on? Are you able to present now?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, and we can see you, but now you're on mute again.
You'll need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for hosting us. I am coming in representation of NYU Langone, and I would like to talk to you about our project with the Vaccine Center. So I would like to share my screen, and that way I can talk about the vaccines. I prepared some slides for you. So we'll do this, share, and I hope I'm good to go. Can you see this screen with the COVID vaccine trials?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
We can see the presentation.
Thank you. So thank you again. We're very committed to the community with our work with vaccines. We really believe community is essential for us, and as we are all aware, it has been a very important topic for vaccine trials and now for vaccine distribution. And as working with the vaccines, we face many, many challenges that are coming from many parts of the community, things like fear, uncertainty, isolation, and mistrust. And it's our job to address all these concerns, to validate them, and to provide education so we can all be well informed about what this topic around vaccines and about the vaccine with COVID involves. Our job is to primarily provide education, answer questions, and then to provide information so people know how to reach us if they would like to hear more about our project. In general, a vaccine is a very good thing that helps our bodies to recognize stranger things or foreign bodies. So in the case of coronavirus, the idea with having a vaccine is that we are preparing our immune system to recognize these foreigner particles like a coronavirus. So when we teach our body who is the enemy, in this case, talking about the enemy as the coronavirus, our body will be prepared to fight it at the moment it sees. So in a way, a vaccine will help us to get, if you want a picture like this, like an army ready to fight it. And whenever our body recognizes the coronavirus particle, then it will be very easy for it to fight it before the COVID can actually infect our cells. So this is a very common principle for many vaccines, and this is basically what all vaccines do. They teach our body to recognize foreign things. And in terms of COVID and vaccines, when you put together a vaccine, you are not actually constructing the virus by itself. So as this picture illustrates very well, the fact that the COVID vaccine includes, in this case, a wheel and the different parts of the bicycle, that doesn't mean that you can put together a bicycle with these 3 little pieces. So it's in the same way the coronavirus. We're just using the DNA for some of these vaccines, just the DNA of one of the proteins of the coronavirus, but we're not really using the whole virus, or we're not going to try to reproduce the virus in a person's body. So why a vaccine is important? It is important from the public health perspective. We want to decrease death and serious disease as much as possible. We want to preserve the functioning of society, and I think we have seen this year how society has been dysfunctional in many ways, not only from the economical perspective, but there are many other issues that are just like out of control because of lack of control of the actual pandemic. Reduce the extra burden of the disease as having people already facing disparities, and also to increase the chance of everyone to enjoy health and well-being. We all want to go back to times when we didn't have this problem with us. So why these vaccines are effective? You can see in the left side infections like diphtheria, polio, and measles. And you can see, like coming from the left to the right, how the curves of the epidemics with these diseases was going. And then with the introduction of the vaccines, you can see the number of the cases that were reported went down. We believe this is the case for the US and for in this case for the whole globe, that we can curb the coronavirus and we can slide it down with vaccines, like it has been demonstrated many times with other vaccines. So right now we're working with the vaccine of AstraZeneca. We completed our studies with the Pfizer vaccine, and then we're going to move forward with another vaccine that is coming from Sanofi. We're looking for people that are interested to participate, they believe they have some chance of acquiring COVID. And we're looking specifically at those communities and people that have some underlying medical conditions that have greater chances of exposure because of their job or simply because of their underlying medical conditions, and people older than 65 in general, but we're trying to include a wide variety of people in our trial. Just to remind people, so we know that the existing companies are creating a lot of doses for the US and for the globe, but not even if they had like infinite capacity, it will be enough for us. So just to put in perspective, Moderna and Pfizer have doses for 22.5 million people in the US by the end of 2020, and that's only 7% of our population. And the US population is 0.3 billion. The vaccines are only enough for 4% of the global population. Definitely a big, a very important topic. So vaccines don't save lives, vaccinations do. We want to create education and generate trust in the community. With that, I end my presentation. This is a picture that I think is important to remember. This is in Roosevelt Island in Manhattan, the New York City smallpox hospital, and now it's just these walls. We want to be like that. Okay, thank you so much. And I will leave some information for you so you know how to reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide more education in the future. With that, I'm going to stop my screen. And okay.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kottkamp, and to everyone else at NYU Langone for all of your great work and dedication to obviously something that's very difficult and in many ways unprecedented. We're going to continue the conversation with you, of course. I know we're discussing with our new health committee ways that we can work best together moving forward, and to have more detailed and ongoing presentations on data as we get it. So I do appreciate that partnership, and we all look forward to continuing, particularly in getting accurate and reliable information out into the community. So thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board or from the public on the presentation we just received? I see that Senator Hoylman said that he participated in the Pfizer vaccine at NYU Langone. So thank you for that. All right, I do not see any other questions or comments. So thank you once again, Dr. Kotkamp, for this wonderful presentation, very informative presentation. Right, so moving on back to the elected officials report. It was a good segue. Senator Hoylman, I'd like to take the floor.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Great to be here. Great to see everyone. Yes, I did participate in the Pfizer vaccine trial at the NYU Vaccine Center. I have to say the nurses and the researchers there were incredibly informative and took good care of me. I'm pretty sure I got the vaccine and not a placebo, since I did have some mild side effects, but they went away pretty quickly, and I would say it beats dying from COVID. So to the extent we can share information about the safety and efficacy of vaccines, and the important part, which is while this vaccine was ramped up quickly, the FDA and the professionals at the NIH didn't cut any corners, and I know the NYU Vaccine Center can confirm that, and their safety trials. So that's going to be a very important message, Kyle, that we need, and the community board needs to get out to the general public as we ramp up distribution of the vaccines. And frankly, distribution is a very key question. And I support efforts by the city and the state to ensure that the most vulnerable communities receive the vaccine first, and that in particular communities of color, which have been most, hardest hit by COVID-19, receive priority. So looking forward to fighting our way out of this and ensuring that the vaccine is as widely distributed as possible. Just wanted to also mention that I have carried over the years a number of bills in Albany to make it a requirement that school children receive vaccines and protect everybody, because it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting other people. And even if you get a COVID-19 vaccine, you still may be able to actually carry and disseminate the virus. So it's important that everyone, even if they have been vaccinated, continues to wear masks and practices social distancing. Sam Vasquez from my team is on the phone with us on the Zoom. I just wanted to thank him. I introduced a bill this week that we're calling Sammy's Law. Sammy Cohen Eckstein was a young man who was hit by a speeding truck and died as a result just a few months before his bar mitzvah. And so we're naming this legislation after him, which would allow New York City to lower its speed limit. Believe it or not, Albany controls speed limits for the city of New York. It shouldn't be that way. And there's a mandatory minimum. Streets have to be 25 miles per hour in the city of New York. The city has no control over that, and 15 miles per hour in school zones. We want to lift that completely. And that's particularly important during this pandemic because we've seen the explosion of automobiles, pedestrian and cyclist use, and outdoor dining. So we need to allow the city to be able to tailor speed limits for particular streets. Statistics show that for every mile per hour that you reduce speed, you save about 3% lives lost in fatalities. So it's very important that we continue to press this, and I hope we can get Sammy's Law passed in Albany this session. Speaking of the session, we may be going back before the end of the year. I know my colleagues will be speaking about it too, but the big question on the table is revenue. Do we wait until the federal government comes through, or do we try to raise revenue now? or at least have a contingency plan for that. I'm certainly in the latter camp, as I know most of my colleagues are in Manhattan. And we have a number of proposals out there to raise revenue. We're looking at massive deficits at both the city and state level and billions of dollars. We're not going to be able to do it all ourselves, but we need to understand what we can do in the state of New York, because cutting essential services, like homeless shelters, like mass transit, like public schools, is just unacceptable. So I'll be working on that with my colleagues. And brighter news, Councilmember Powers and I negotiated a relief for small businesses at Grand Central Station with the MTA. It's a shared sacrifice model that we instituted, whereby the small business owners will be paying in rent a certain percentage of their receipts. And that's so important because foot traffic has slowed to almost non-existent on some days in Grand Central, it seems. And so we need both the landlord, in this case, the MTA, and the tenant to pay a little. And in fact, Council Assembly Member Harvey Epstein, who's I know on the Zoom, and I have replicated that type of shared sacrifice model for a bill called the Save Our Storefronts legislation. And Harvey and I are going to be pushing that in Albany to save our small businesses. We're looking at like a third to half of our small businesses, basically being extinguished due to this virus. And if we're going to see them through this second wave, they're going to need our support. And I think it's important that the state step in and do that. And then one more item. Last week was World AIDS Day. And on that very somber day, for many people, this pandemic is not their first rodeo, those who have suffered AIDS and HIV. I introduced a package of bills with a number of my colleagues, including Assemblymember Dick Godfrey, the chair of the Health Committee, that would institute what I'm calling universal PrEP and PEP. And PrEP is pre-exposure prophylactics, and PEP is post-exposure prophylactics. And they're basically one pill a day drugs that can block HIV transmission. We want to make those drugs as widely as available as possible, particularly to young people in communities of color. You should be able to go to a pharmacist and get PEP without a prescription. You shouldn't have to require pre-authorization by your insurance company, and your insurance company should be required to pay for PEP and PrEP, and that's what we're going to do with our legislation. And just wanted to say, I wish everyone, the happiest of holidays. I'm pretty confident that 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020 was, and just want to thank the community board for all their effort, and particularly my colleagues for their partnership on so many initiatives to get us through this pandemic, including food distribution, and the allotment of PPE to so many of our neighbors who are struggling. Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right, thank you, Senator. I knocked on wood for 2021. So
yeah, right. How could it be worse is my question.
Let's not find out. I have 2 questions for you. Adam is first.
Senator, I want to applaud your efforts on lowering the speed limit. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope it happens. Anecdotally, there was a very fast car going down Park Avenue, and I was sort of shaking my fist in the wind, being like, "Ugh, what a jerk." Here it is. And then lo and behold, a flashing light appears, and it was a speed camera, that was able to make this person's day a lot worse and mine a lot better. So thank you for your continued effort and support for red light and speed cameras here in the district and here in the city. We could use a lot more. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I have a bill, Adam, also that I carry that we call it the Furious Act. It's Fighting Urban Racing in Our Streets Act, named after that classic film Fast and Furious, which would allow speed cameras to operate longer than just school hours, and hopefully catch a bunch of these drag racers and jackasses who are using our streets as the Indy 500. So I hope we can have more speed cameras, because it also reduces a lot of, frankly, interface with NYPD and stress on them and on different communities. So the more we can do this through cameras, the better.
Thank you. Jim Collins.
Good evening, Senator.
Hi.
How are you? I
Well,
wanted to raise the issue. You mentioned that so many small businesses will be losing their leases and going out of business. That allows for many of the chain restaurants and chain businesses to come in and gobble up leases quite cheaply. I'm wondering if you would support the notion of zoning that allows for designated small businesses to be cleared in that area. It's called formula business zoning. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. It's been adopted in San Francisco and a few other places. But what it does is it allows the certain blocks to be set aside, or certain spaces within blocks to be set aside and used only by businesses that are not chains, not McDonald's, not Chase Manhattan, not Walmart, et cetera, Walgreens in our case. And I'm just wondering if you would consider that as an option to preserve small businesses, small retail businesses, particularly in small restaurants within, certainly in Manhattan and perhaps elsewhere.
yeah, Jim, it's a great question. Formula retail zoning is something that the borough president has actually pioneered. By the way, I've grown so fond of Gail's brother photocopy machine or printer, because I see it almost every Zoom meeting. I'm going to miss it if we ever go live again. But Gail did that on the Upper West Side. In fact, Jim, I carry legislation, S8577. Would love you to take a look at it. It authorizes the city of New York to institute formula retail zoning throughout the 5 boroughs. I will continue to advocate for that. I totally agree with you on its importance. Actually, my colleague,
particularly in this environment.
yes, my assembly colleague Harvey Epstein carries the version in the other house. So we're working on that. I also carry a bill that was highlighted in the New York Times. They had an opinion piece this weekend on saving small business, and it would institute a vacancy tax. If a landlord pushes out a tenant and the space remains vacant over a certain period of time. We see that again and again, stories of small businesses being forced out, and then the space is shuttered for months or years. It drives me crazy. I know it does you too. So we need to create a disincentive, and that's why I'm sponsoring that legislation as well. Thank you, though. It's a great question.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All good. Next up is Assemblymember Harvey Epstein. And just again, I encourage everyone to be short and sweet. We do have a robust public comment section.
Thanks, Kyle. I can be really short because Brad talked a lot about my bills already, so I don't need to talk about some of those. I'll talk about 2 things. One is our youth councils opened up applications for membership. So if you know people between the ages of 12 and 22 who live or go to school in District 74, we're excited to have additional applications for members. You can reach out to my office, or their applications are available online. We'd love to have more young people really do really interesting things. They have been leaders in our city on really issues around student Metro cards, getting rid of the half-price Metro cards, environmental justice issues. We'd love to have more. I'm having my youth council town hall January 12th. I hope some folks can join us and hear about the issues going on for the 2021 legislative session. The last thing is, I know Brad talked about upcoming session maybe next week. And the things that we really need to talk about is revenue. People know we have a $14 billion deficit. Even if we do get federal relief, as we're hearing Congress may or may not provide, that won't cover the debt that we have. We really need to raise revenue, or we're going to see cuts across the board, 20% cuts in education, cuts to CUNY, cuts to nonprofits. The governor's already held $4 billion back. So the goal is really to get back and to have revenue. My mezzanine debt bill, Brad's pied-à-terre tax, high income earner tax. We need to do that now. If we don't do that, New York is in serious fiscal trouble, New York City and New York State. So I hope you'll all be out there supporting the raising the revenue, the eviction moratorium, to helping the small businesses because we need it now more than ever. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Assembly Member. Are there any questions for the Assembly Member from the board or from the public? All right, I'm not seeing any.
Thank you all. Have a good holiday.
You as well. Next up, we have Assembly Member Court.
Thanks, Kyle. Good evening to all. I know it's been a long agenda and it's just the start, so I'll be brief, especially because Brad and Harvey both covered so much of the area that I wanted to on revenue. Assemblymember Epstein and I are in the same conference and working on the same issues. The one issue that I wanted to talk about that's of great significance and peril at this point is the MTA and our train and subway system. Historically, if you look at the quarter century of disinvestment by the legislature in the MTA capital program, which is the vehicle for the funding of the buses of subways, our problems with funding predate the pandemic, but the pandemic has exacerbated structural deficits within the MTA, its capital plan, its long-term borrowing, and its inability to meet needs. 3 weeks ago, I wrote an op-ed talking about the need to raise revenue for many purposes, but the specific purpose is that the MTA finds itself essentially in a death spiral, in part not of its own making because of the pandemic and the loss of 70% or thereabout of its customers and some of its best customers, Best Buy, those who buy a monthly Metro card, and who are critical to the sustainability of the system. So I know it's been talked about by my other colleagues in state government and the multitude of reasons why we need new revenue, irrespective of what happens at the federal level. But of acute problem is the bus and subways, with potential layoffs of the MTA, service cuts, delays potentially in track and signal work on the Lexington line, which I and my other state colleagues fought for to ensure in the most recent capital plan. This could have devastating effects on both the system itself, the track work, and the ability to have any sort of recovery. Because I assure you, the recovery, when it comes, will be stunted if people can't get to and from work in a timely fashion, as we rethink what it is to go to work in the Midtown Business District and elsewhere. So to keep in mind all of the reasons why we need new revenue, both from the federal government, but also in and of itself at the state government. The funding of our buses and subways is really on the line and in as perilous a condition as I've seen in my 10 years of office. So that's not really a happy note to end on, but it is the truth. And with that, I wish everyone, for those who are celebrating, a happy Hanukkah and happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member. Are there any questions for the Assembly Member from the board or from the public? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much. Next up, do we have Katie from Councilmember Rivera's office? All right, I don't see Katie from Councilmember Rivera's office. Let's move on to Madeline from Senator Krueger's office.
Hi, everyone. It's Madeline from Senator Krueger's office. Kyle, thank you. Senator Krueger thanks Community Board 6 for their leadership with homelessness while representing the community regarding the Renwick Hotel. Like Senator Krueger's colleagues have mentioned, the members are spending much of their time preparing for the upcoming legislative session, which could be at the end of this year or the beginning of the new year. As a month has passed since the big election, Senator Krueger is hosting a Senate roundtable on elections this Friday to discuss legislation to improve the design and operation of the New York City Board of Elections. So the roundtable is Friday at 10 a.m. The public can tune in through our Senate website. We have a lineup of testimony from Board of Elections folks, poll workers, and many other involved in the city election process. Our office is still troubleshooting with many constituents about unemployment. So if you or someone you know is facing problems with the State Department of Labor, feel free to reach out to our office. Otherwise, happy holidays, and let our office know if we can help you with anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madeline. Are there any questions from the board or from the public for Madeline from Senator Krueger's office? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's go. Is Katie from Councilmember Rivera's office here, or is the council, are we waiting on the council member?
Hey, Kyle, I think we're waiting on the council member. I know she had another meeting, but she wants to say, you know, where's the board? So we'll wait for her.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
Let's move on to Taylor from Congresswoman Maloney's office.
Hi, my name's Taylor. I'm from Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney's office. This week, the Congresswoman released a statement on why she'll be voting against the NDAA. Her bill, the Corporate Transparency Act, is likely to be passed in an upcoming vote before this Congress is over. Her legislation for a Smithsonian Women's Museum was passed unanimously in Senate committee, which is uncommon right now. And she voted alongside colleagues to pass the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act. Along with colleagues in the New York delegation, Congresswoman Maloney pushed for an emergency MTA funding. She joined Manhattan small business owners in demanding crucial COVID relief, including her Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. On the Oversight Committee, the Congresswoman called the heads of Purdue and Sackler Pharmas to a hearing on their role in fueling the opioid epidemic. She is seeking accounting of political appointees in career positions. She issued a subpoena regarding mistreatment at the Irwin County Immigration Detention Center and held a hearing to examine the risk to an accurate and complete census count. That's just some of the stuff going on as we finish up the 116th Congress. Our office is still working on a bunch of constituent casework issues. Tomorrow is the last day for us to be allowed to submit an inquiry to the IRS for anyone who hasn't received a stimulus payment. So if you're still waiting on that and want an inquiry, send me an email and I'll get it to the right caseworker. After that, it can be claimed on your next year's taxes. We're also still working on folks' SBA loan requests. So if you know of any small businesses who've applied and not gotten their funds yet, again, reach out. As always, you can get more information on our website or social media, subscribing to our newsletter, or sending me an email. And that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Are there any questions or comments from the board or from the public for Congresswoman Maloney's office?
There seems to be a question from a member of the public.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Hello?
Let's see, there it is. Mr. Filipchenko, would you state your question? Mr. Filipchenko, would you unmute yourself and state your question?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a question. No one bringing up to privatize MTA for New Yorkers who can buy the bond or some kind like shareholders. It's probably more financial and more making sense. The New Yorkers can be on MTA, not asking every time funding or like state and government funding, because it will be more common sense if all New Yorkers can be on the MTA. And not just wasting money. It's like money hole. It's a huge budget get wasted for MTA.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Our electeds are on, they'll take that back to their offices and to their representatives. So thank you very much for that. Moving on, I'd like to welcome Patrick from Councilmember Power's office.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I don't have many updates, but this will just serve as an introduction. My name is Patrick Hill. I'm the new community liaison for Community Board 6 in Councilmember Powers' office. I've met a few of you so far, but I'm very much looking forward to working with the rest of you together in the future. Just an FYI, Sarah Newman, who previously was the liaison for CB6, is still in our office. She's just been promoted to our legislative director. So she's still working for Team Powers, fortunately. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually. I do have a few general updates I'll move through quickly. Just in regard to COVID, our office is still monitoring the state of the coronavirus and keeping track of the infection rates as we deal with this second wave of sorts, first wave, second wave. And we continue to ask that all fellow New Yorkers continue to follow CDC and Department of Health guidelines to stay safe. Continue to wash your hands regularly, wear masks, and practice social distancing by staying 6 feet apart. Our office continues to partner with the wonderful organization ACE, which has proven to be an invaluable resource for our community. ACE is a supplementary cleaning service that performs spot cleaning in locations that have not been attended to by DSNY or other agencies. You can submit requests for spot cleanings to our office should the need arise. We'll submit the request to ACE. It should be noted, though, that this is not a replacement for the wonderful work that our colleagues at DSNY and the other responding agencies do on a daily basis. This is generally meant to help deal with some of the areas that DSNY is unable to deal with due to the large amount of work that they have on their plate. In regards to a quick legislative update, we are working with the mayor's office, other council members, and state representatives to address solitary confinement. As Friday, Councilmember Powers, in his role as chairperson of the Criminal Justice Committee, will be chairing a hearing specifically dealing with how to address and solve solitary confinement. It's a long-standing issue, well documented, that solitary is harmful. This will be an opportunity to hear from all stakeholders to help figure out a path forward for ending solitary confinement. Lastly, our office is organizing a virtual fundraiser in conjunction with New York Cares and Room to Grow for this year's toy and coat drives. I will post links for both of those drives in the chat, and I'll make sure to send over relevant information, including the flyer, to the staff at the community board so that can be properly disseminated if people do reach out looking for the information. If you're able to, please consider making a donation to those in need. And as I said, I'll post those links to the chat. If there's any issues or concerns that anyone would like to follow up with our office on, please feel free to reach out. I'm still gaining my bearings, so hearing more about some of the issues that you guys have been working on with Sarah that I may not know about yet would be very, very helpful. I'll post my contact information in the chat as well. But thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I just want to wish everyone a happy holidays.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and welcome to CB6. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
Are there any questions from the board or from the public for Patrick? Since he is new, we should ask him all the questions.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, seeing none, man. You're good. Katie, is the council member joining us yet? If not, we can start the public comment section and the council member can speak when I give my report.
I can't see who's on here. I don't know if you can see if Lena's here.
Doesn't look like she's joined yet, but Kyle, you do still have Brees from Assemblymember Gottfried's office, and I believe Michael Stinson's on the line as well from the comptroller's office.
So let's move on to Brees from Assemblymember Gottfried's office.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, great. Happy holidays from Assemblymember Gottfried. I'll be very brief. He introduced legislation that would require Medicaid recipients or applicants when receiving an adverse determination to be notified of their consumer health information, their consumer health advocates contact information, which is already the case for people with private or nonprofit insurance. And that was signed into law on December 2nd. He was very pleased. It's another piece of legislation relating to healthcare that he sponsored in the Assembly. Senator Hoylman sponsored it in the Senate. It would require increased consumer advocate representation on the Health and Health Policy Planning Council, which is a very important state body. Most states have them. It is the body that, for instance, ruled to allow Beth Israel to consolidate its facilities and relocate. And previously it had only very limited representation for consumers, less than all the surrounding states of New York. That bill passed both houses. We're hoping Governor, he's required to make an up or down determination on signing or not signing it by December 15th. We hope to report back to you then. And I think that is where I'm going to, obviously he shares the previously mentioned concerns on budget. raising additional revenues, protecting the MTA from these doomsday budget cuts, and a lot of other issues, but I won't go into those at length. Happy holidays, everyone, and congratulations, Kyle, on your election as chair. I have to admit, I thought your voice was Jesus Perez last month, and so I failed to congratulate you. And let me do that belatedly now. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be compared to Jesus's voice, so I think that is a compliment. Are there questions or comments for Assemblymember Gottfried's office from the board or from the public? All right, I'm seeing none. Thank you. Do we have Michael Stinson from the Comptroller's office here? Michael, are you on? Okay. I do not see him, and I do not see Councilmember Rivera as well. So just let us know when the council member joins, and we'll let her speak at that time. But now we'll move on to the public, members of the public section who want to speak. We've had some people confirm in advance, so I will go through those individuals first. And then Jesus, if you can confirm with me who has signed up through the Q&A feature, I'd greatly appreciate that. So
Sure.
before we begin, just to set the ground rules, each member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. This is not a public hearing section or a Q&A section or committee business section. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on an issue that is important to them. So we'll begin with Deborah Ferron from Murray Hill. As we give you the floor to speak, please, of course, introduce yourself, your connection to the district, and the topic that you would like to speak on. So first up, Deborah.
Okay, I think, am I unmuted?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. I first of all want to thank the community board for their time and their dedication. All of us are very appreciative of all the work that you do. We understand it's a challenge to make judgments on so many issues, from traffic patterns to homeless, particularly when you have day jobs. The homeless issue is one of the most serious ones we face right now. It's fraught with heartbreak, detail, implications too difficult for any one committee member of CB6 to be able to grasp on their own. And therefore, it's an issue that's too complicated for anyone to give a nod of approval or condone. So if we don't speak out and ask the right questions, we're condoning that this is the right thing and that we should have the Renwick turned into a shelter for Murray Hill. While you may not yay or nay, what you can do is say something when you suspect something is wrong. The decision made earlier by CB6 before today's letter was sent to accept without question that the Renwick should be turned into a shelter was based on no facts. Andrew Borden admitted at the last DHS meeting that they were working on the fair share information, but according to law, that should have been done way in advance of the site selection. No one questioned this, and if you had an idea of the number of shelters in the area, maybe you would have. We know that our politicians had no idea, and no one had looked at the infrastructure issues to see if we could even support the homeless in this way. We all know about the disturbances at the Lucerne. Citizens were allowed to be brought in, and now, after the back and forth of legal decisions, they will likely be pushed out. These are human lives for whom we need to have compassion. These are not chess pieces, not decisions you should feel comfortable condoning. Imagine if you lost your job and became homeless. You're told you'll be put in a shelter, but it's a shelter that's an old hotel. It wasn't built to be a permanent living space for 350 people to stay on a consistent basis. And you're placed into a neighborhood with several shelters already, including one down the block. What do you think your access would be to the fire department, the police department, and New York City infrastructure? Absolutely none of this has been considered. We welcome shelters in Murray Hill. We welcome them so much that we are overrun with shelters, including the 850-bed Bellevue Men's Shelter. The Renwick would be one of 9 shelters in Murray Hill. Some of those are permanent, others we've been told are temporary. We have replaced our small businesses due to COVID with haphazardly placed shelters. Why are our neighbors upset? We were given little to no notice that this was happening. It was poorly communicated, and we were given inaccurate fair share information that has now been updated and will be updated again because the city has said that they didn't have the right figures. And at a November 16th meeting, we were told that it was a done deal. And in fact, we were told that, quote, sometimes when you give people enough warning and they have enough money and time, they fight it. Well, I'm not certain yet that that's what the city did was illegal. We are in the midst of figuring that out, but not opening the process for public comment. Hiding the
Hi,
announcement.
Jesus, is that the time?
That is the timer. Yep.
All
Can I
right.
finish? I have 2 more sentences.
Oh,
Hiding the announcement.
yeah, Deborah, the 3 minutes are up, and wherever that beeping has come, please.
I'd like to finish one sentence.
I'll let you finish one sentence, but we can't go on any further than that.
Thank you. We've heard the expression that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men and women do nothing. And I know a few of you personally, and I won't believe that this is the case with you.
All right. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate that. I do want to make a point of clarification before we move on to other speakers, just so that we have the proper context for all of the public comments. CB6, first of all, does not have any say in the siting of shelters at all. And as a result of that, we have not taken a vote on the shelters at all. So there has been no decision by CB6 to place or not to place shelters because that is not within our jurisdiction. So I don't want it on the record that that point of clarification and for future public comments that we have for today. Jesus, who do we have next?
The next person on the list to speak is Kristen Kligerman, who is representing the group Save Murray Hill, and she is speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district. Ms. Kligerman, you may begin.
But Councilmember Rivera is here. I was wondering if she could speak.
Does she have to go anywhere? Because can we save this for the section where I'll give reports and we can have her lead off just because we started the public section already and I just want to get through this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to get her to another meeting after this. It's been a busy night, but I know she wants to talk to the board and make sure that she talks to the public session. We don't want to interrupt it any further because I know the speakers have started.
All right.
I can come back next month.
No, we need to see you before the holidays. So go ahead. You have the floor.
I'm so sorry that I'm late. It's been a really busy week, and I just want to congratulate you, Kyle. This is pretty cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We met a few years ago. I knew that you would be very involved in the community, and I have to thank Molly Hollister, who's the best. Okay, so I'll just be very brief. You know, why I'm very late today is because, I mean, we've had nonstop hearings in my role as the chair of the committee on hospitals. I've had quite a few hearings throughout the pandemic, but most recently we just had one on vaccines. We had Pfizer testify, we had the city testify, all the agencies involved. And so by December 15th, if you haven't heard, we'll start to roll those out. And of course, there are tiers for certain people as to who is going to get the vaccine, and it should be readily available. And we're going to try to do that operating with equity in mind every time. I guess I just wanted to also just thank you all. I know you were talking about COPA, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which I think is going to be really important, coupled with community land trusts. And of course, trying to figure out how we can support people experiencing homelessness. I think this is one of the many kind of multi-pronged ways that we have to address this kind of the roots of this crisis. So, you know, that's just some of the things that I'm working on. I don't want to take any more time. I already feel pretty bad.
So that's, I'm willing to do that.
Brad's here too. And so I wanted to thank CB6 for all of your work, because you have had really, really honest conversations, and you're always having those conversations, understanding that the systemic injustices are really rooted in racism and classism. And unfortunately, sometimes you see those responses from people who don't want to face those conversations. So I want to just thank you for your courage and your honesty and everything that you have done, and especially for particular community board members who have taken leadership on that. There are many of you. I don't want to single anyone out, because then you might know who my favorites are. But this board has been really instrumental in pushing some issues forward. And again, really looking at it through equity. So whether that's transportation or housing or small business support, That enables me to be a better council member, to be able to use the work that you're doing, all of the recommendations that you put forward, the resolutions, your ideas, even on the sidewalk extension thing on 3rd Avenue, which I'm totally down with. This is why I look forward to coming to CB6. So with that, I'll just leave it there. I hope everyone has a happy and healthy and safe holiday. I know it's gonna look and feel very, very different. But just know that you know, we'll get through this, and we've done all right so far. I know there've been some losses, and I think we're on our way to being in a much better place. So I'm just thankful that we could do it united.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. We extend the same best wishes to you and your family and your staff. So thank you so much. Are there any questions for the council member from the board members or the public? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. Jesus, can we return back
Excuse
to-
me.
Oh,
Sorry, there's a question from a Felix Guzman asking, can COPA and land trust initiatives be spoken about by Ms. Rivera a bit further? So asking about COPA.
Okay, I'll give you, I can't take too much time, Mr. Guzman, so I'm going to be really brief. So the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, I think you all might be speaking about it tonight if you haven't already, and forgive me, I don't know the agenda, but it's giving the ability for some of our nonprofit entities to be able to purchase land and develop truly affordable housing. That's the end goal of the bill. You know, typically when you have a vacant land or land for sale, larger corporations are able to buy it because they just have a more sophisticated operation. And though we find that when you have a nonprofit entity like Cooper Square Mutual Housing Association, once they have that land, they're managing it. It has been proven to stay affordable, both residential and commercial spaces. And so they also have a community land trust. It is the model that we're using across the city. And what I've been able to do in the council was secure unprecedented funding for organizing for community land trusts. And so they're using the Cooper Square model. There are community land trusts across the country. There was a very large successful model in Vermont, I think when probably Bernie Sanders was mayor of Burlington. But the point being that we have our very own in our backyard in District 2. And so there are other ones being developed in East New York, the Brownsville, Bed-Stuy area, Chinatown, East Harlem, El Barrio just closed on actually purchasing land, and of course in the South Bronx. So we have a few groups that are working towards that under the leadership of the New Economy Project. And so what we've seen is that with the CLT model, having the COPA legislation accompany that would, I think, be a really, really great, successful way of making sure that we have affordable commercial and residential space. So that's kind of the point of the bill and the organizing. I hope that gave you some more information. You could always contact my office and we could break it down for you a little bit further. We have not gotten a hearing on COPA yet. I am kind of, you know, demanding that we get that in housing and buildings as soon as possible. So I'm hoping to have some good news for you, maybe in the new year.
All right, thank you, council member. All right, I see no more hands or Q&As. So Jesus, can we return to the public comment section?
Sure. The next speaker is Kristen Kligerman, who represents the organization Save Murray Hill, and she is speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district. Ms. Kligerman, you may state your question, and thank you for your patience.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, board, for letting me have some time to speak tonight. My name's Kristen. I am one of the founding members of Save Murray Hill. We were founded in 2017 when the MTA proposed a ventilation plant to be built under Park Avenue. We were curious about the project and did some research on it and found out that the entire project was based on old 30-year-old data, actually. And due to some of our challenges of that large government agency, the project was canceled. And we were very pleased with the results in that the unnecessary project was not built. Fast forward 3 years. In middle of last month, middle of November, is when we learned about the shelter to be built at the Renwick Hotel. When we listened to the CB6 meeting that discussed that, the committee meeting that discussed it, and we listened to Matt Borden be unable to explain how the shelter location was chosen, we became concerned. You know, you lose your trust in an agency like DHS when they can't explain how that location was chosen. Since that time, we've spent our hours looking for facts, submitting a FOIL request, meeting with politicians, and have come up with a lot of interesting things. I'm going to share 2 discoveries and then 1 observation, and that'll be all. The RFP process that is used by the Department of Homeless Services allows that department to negotiate with distressed property owners, most often hotel owners. This process has no transparency. We, the citizens of New York City, don't have any idea who's offering their buildings to the Department of Homeless Services and what kind of deals they are striking. As a result, the locations of shelters in New York City are based on real estate deals, not necessarily on need. It's kind of stunning if you think about it. And to that point, my second fact that we discovered was that it was perfectly illustrated when we said, show us the data, how the Renwick Hotel is the perfect location for the Department of Homeless Services. We were told, again, by Matt Borden, that they were going to work on the paperwork. They were going to work on the fair share document, and they will be showing it to us soon. When it was completed, 3 weeks later, it was full of errors and omissions, and the data that this document was based on is 5 years old. It is nothing to do with the world today in Murray Hill. The counts were off. The data was leaving things out. Oh, sorry. COVID-19 is a reality, and we're weary of change, and we're looking for facts. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Jesus, who do we have next?
Next up, we have Melissa Cohen, who is a resident of Murray Hill and speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district.
Thank you.
I'll keep it a consistent theme. You guys can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, so I'd really like to thank the community board for allowing me to speak on this issue. It's my first time ever speaking on one of these calls because it is an issue that I feel really strongly about. I'm a long-term Murray Hill resident. I've lived here for over 20 years, my husband for over 25. We've raised our teenage daughter here. And the change in our neighborhood in recent years is really palpable, and it's due in no small part, truthfully, to the number of homeless shelters and homeless population in Murray Hill and the surrounding neighborhoods of Kips Bay and Midtown South. And I really want to start off by saying that my objection to the addition of a permanent homeless shelter at the Renwick in no way stems from a lack of compassion for the homeless population or from a feeling of NIMBYism. It's actually quite the contrary. My concerns around the shelter are twofold. One, our neighborhood already bears a disproportionate burden in housing the homeless. And secondly, I truly don't believe that hotel rooms are a good permanent solution to homelessness. I believe that the first public speaker really, I mean, she couldn't have said it any better. She really gave fantastic facts to demonstrate that. If I may, I just want to give a couple of anecdotes to explain what some of the residents of Murray Hill are facing. I no longer feel safe walking in my own neighborhood after dark, and no one should feel that way about where they live. I've had multiple encounters with homeless people in the neighborhood when they are aggressively panhandling. With everything being contactless nowadays, I often am not carrying cash, but a polite apology and a smile often does not work. I've been followed, I've been yelled at, I've been made to feel very unsafe if I don't give people money. I recently had a man facing me, walking backward to make sure that he stayed in front of me, blocking my path, continuing to ask me for money and berating me with language that I'm certainly not going to repeat here. But it actually took another passerby intervening on my behalf to get him to leave me alone. And a second anecdote would be about a month and a half ago. My daughter needed to drop something off at night at a friend's building. We stopped about halfway there just to text the friend to clarify where we were leaving the package. And as we were waiting, a homeless man with his mask hanging completely uselessly around his neck approached us. Before I could even register what he was doing, he was leaning into my face, tried to put his head on my shoulder. And of course, I moved away, and he began to spew extremely explicit sexual instructions to me. This again was with my teenage daughter standing next to me. Grabbed her arm, walked away as fast as I could as he cackled at us and continued to scream things at me. Luckily, he didn't follow us, but obviously we were both left quite shaken. The area surrounding, I know I'm out of time. I just want to say that the area surrounding Grand Central is already a magnet for the homeless, and adding another permanent shelter a block away is only going to exacerbate that situation. So thank you.
Jesus, who's next?
Next up is Maggie Darcy. She is a resident of Murray Hill, and she is speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district.
Hi, this is Maggie. Yes, I've been living in this neighborhood of Murray Hill for 20 years. I've been living in the city for 40. I lived through the deinstitutionalization of people here in the 80s and what that did to the homeless population. My two concerns are these: compliance and safety. Who from the city is legally responsible for oversight of this shelter? Who from the city will be making sure residents, core, and security guards comply with safety regulations and treatment regimens for the residents on an ongoing basis, not just this December and January, but for the next year, 2 years, 5 years? In my experience living in a HUD building at one point, I discovered that over time, the regulations were no longer being enforced by the people who were supposed to be enforcing them, the security guards in the building and the people managing them. I am very concerned about the safety in this neighborhood. I also have a business in this neighborhood. People come to see me, and I am concerned for their safety. Also, we are in a pandemic. How is the city and CORE going to enforce protocols to protect the residents, workers, and our community from COVID? How are they going to handle testing, exposures, and illness in that facility? And what happens if there's an outbreak at the shelter? And will the community be informed, and how will they handle it? That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Darcy.
All right, it does look like there's a question from board member Jim Collins.
All right, Jim. Jim, are you there?
All right, yeah, I'm here. I just needed to unclick. I wanted to suggest that these folks who are time limited because of our time limits, that they compile whatever they have in mind. Some of them appear to be reading their statements. I would ask that they submit those written comments to the board office if there's no objection.
All right, thank you, Jim. Yes, we will.
Is there
Oh, yep, no, anyone who who spoke publicly today, if you can send in your written work as well, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Next up on the list is William Leeds, a resident of Murray Hill, speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district.
Hello, community board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your work and for the support in the neighborhood. I've lived and worked in the neighborhood in Murray Hill for over 30 years. I have an office on 40th Street and very close to the shelter, about a half a block away. And this is in no means NIMBYism. I actually lost my brother to homelessness, not having a proper place where he could live and thrive. And so I'm acutely aware of what goes on in these shelters. And clearly from the previous, I would say Melissa Cohn made it very clear. Our neighborhood, and I've seen this, I've been here over 30 years. In the last couple of years, it's just been increasingly dangerous with people panhandling, urinating in doorways. I mean, everything that is so undesirable, and a solution has to be found. So it's quite obvious that when a neighborhood can't handle the homeless that we already have, how can we accept more homeless? It just doesn't make sense. And on top of it, that location is on the border between residential. The zoning there is both residential and commercial. So across the street, you have large office buildings, therefore giving the homeless a large degree of autonomy that they don't really need. The homeless need support. These people are going to drift around the neighborhood into the little parks that we have and the little areas and the big areas, which are these large buildings such as 101 and many other places that don't really have support. I mean, homeless need a neighborhood that starts to recognize them, know them, and treat them as human beings. These people are not going to thrive here. They're not going to do well, and a better place has to be found. And this is not in any way that I don't want in my backyard. I want in my backyard when I can help them. But when I already can't help the people that are there, they're not complying with masks, et cetera, these good meaning homeless people who are going to be at the Renwick are going to be mixed in with the people who are already here and are somewhat fairly aggressive. So it really doesn't make sense. And, I just want to make that statement. I'm an architect. I deal with people all the time. I want to help people. I want to create the right environment for people to thrive. And this is not the situation that's going to occur at the Renwick. And it's not going to be a positive thing for the neighborhood or for the city. And I just want to make that statement. And I appreciate whatever the community board can do to help out the neighborhood and help out particularly people like Melissa Cohn, who spoke of the dangers of the neighborhood. I mean, these people, I can tolerate them. I lived with somebody who had those issues, but my wife feels threatened, and it's just not the right situation. Thank you very much, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Next person on the list is Peter Harrison, who is a resident of this district and is speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Happy holidays. Kyle, congratulations on the election.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone on CB6 who has come out vocally and supported homeless New Yorkers and the need to be housed safely during a pandemic. I particularly want to apologize for the members and staff members in CB6 who've been attacked personally for their support. I think that's a disgrace, and I appreciate the comments from CB6 and electeds condemning that action. I just want to say that, I've heard certainly from folks tonight in good faith and elsewhere about this issue across the city, getting tied up about process. I think we can all clutch our pearls about process for any agency with the city and scratch and see that there's problems with transparency and communication. But the reality is, even if there was a great process and great communication, chances are you still wouldn't want an additional shelter in your neighborhood. And I think that what we have to remind ourselves about here is two things. One is we are in the state of a pandemic at the moment, and we need folks to be housed safely, even if just temporarily. We had a terrible fire at Middle Church downtown where a homeless shelter for women was destroyed. That's a very acute crisis, but these men and women are under this kind of pressure already. And second of all, I understand the concerns about this is not a permanent solution. I'm someone that's worked with the homeless for many years and advocated for housing policies that would solve this for many years. So what I would say to everyone here in good faith who has opposed on whatever grounds, good or not, against a shelter is to think about being proactive about permanent solutions. Support politicians and policies that actually solve this problem by creating enough supportive housing and permanent affordable housing. Carolina Rivera was just talking about community land trusts and Bernie Sanders. I was a part of that research project for the New York City Community Land Trust. There are solutions on the table right now on the city level, on the state level, on the federal level. So please, I encourage all of you to come to those meetings to support those policies where the folks that do need the services for mental health, for addiction, for job training can get them, that's going to take more sacrifices from all of us. So if all of us can agree that a shelter in a hotel during a pandemic is not a permanent solution, let's work together on making sure that permanent solutions are enacted and passed. And I encourage everyone very specifically to participate in the Tax the Rich campaign in Albany right now to get funding from the wealthiest members of our community to pay for permanent housing and other types of supportive services. That is on the table literally right now. And I encourage everyone that has objections to the shelter to take part in that action. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pete.
Am I supposed to speak already?
Kyle, you're muted.
I just got unmuted, but I wasn't introduced.
Yeah, Jesus, can we introduce the next speaker?
Okay, so I just introduced myself then, I guess.
Just hold up.
Mr. Guzman, you are after Mr. Filipchenko.
We're gonna go to, okay, yeah. So let's go to Mr. Filipchenko first, and then Mr. Guzman will speak right after.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Vitaly Filipchenko. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm a business owner. Like, I understand, like, people doesn't like it, homeless, whatever, but it's never be same because nobody live on the streets. They don't understand what's happened. One of solution to create a job. Like, I'm business owner, small business owner. I'm talk to each one company who delivered stuff for restaurants, for bodega stores. Problem is now with parking situation. And all this restaurant occupied is parking spot for commercial vehicles. I understand they have to survive. But we, like a moving company owner, delivery companies still get tickets, parking violation. I would like to get less parking tickets and create more jobs, because every time I spoke with a homeless person, I said like, hey, if you want to get extra money, please come by, you can work for me. But I cannot get more employees because problem with the parking situation. Every time I'm working, any kind of delivery, any kind of moving customers, residential, commercial move, we got a parking ticket because no way to find the legal parking spot. How are we going to create the parking jobs if I got every time the tickets, I have to compensate it? So one of the solutions homeless to create a job. That's what I'm offering. Like essential business, we have to find out what we have to do with parking violations. People have to move, people have to eat, people have to deliver it. That's what my main concern, to get the big solutions, solve the small solution. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Filipchenko.
All right, next speaker is Mr. Felix Guzman, who is a community organizer with Vocal New York, speaking on the opening of a new permanent homeless shelter in our district.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Felix Guzman. I am formerly homeless, formerly incarcerated. I say that because I understand the stereotypes of what a homeless person looks like or might be. I was actually homeless as a result of my building being turned into a shelter as the cluster site fiasco that de Blasio created. And I'm also a former resident of a single adult men's shelter that was housed in a hotel, the Red Lion Inn. The shelter provider for that was Procore Services, which is the current provider that is to be looking to offer services at the Renwick. Now, this hotel is being proposed as a shelter for families, which I was just told would include possibly the elderly and adult sons or parents with adult child with disabilities. Now, as a formerly homeless individual, I understand that that the shelter system is a failure. However, from personal experience, Core Pro Services actually provides resources. They provide referrals to employment. They provide referrals to training, to recovery-oriented services to mental health. They actually are an agency that is proactive. In fact, if you were to look up any of the scorecards for repairs and or talk to any of to members of the homeless organizing community, you would actually hear that Procore Services is actually one of the better providers, as is Project Renewal, which is taking the city by storm with what's happening over the Lucerne Hotel. We have seen the moral failures of shelters being placed in areas where the resources aren't in-house and within walking distance. With the amount of money being handed over to shelter providers and the lack of accountability attached to taxpayer monies, which are subsidizing said shelters, we are failing the homeless and the city of New York's residents. All shelters should have resources available within walking distance, a phone call away, a stone's throw away. Every homeless person in shelter could be placed into an apartment if we were to actually allocate the funds away from just throwing them at shelter providers and looking to provide affordable, safe housing. We are talking thousands upon thousands. City government should be creating shelters with exit points, meaning that safe and affordable housing should be the entry points into society. Instead, what is happening is that the homeless are being treated like throwaways and made to feel like they should be grateful for just having a roof over their head. Now, we have seen how shelter provider Project Renewal has taken it upon itself to retrofit the Lucerne Hotel with recovery-oriented services on site. This was all possible because of the coming together of the concerned and compassionate residents of the Upper West Side, including but not limited to the Upper West Side Open Hearts Initiative. I can tell you that what is happening on the Upper West Side is not just for show. We have folks who are holding spiritual workshops, providing meals, clothing, work opportunities, and more. The Renwick Hotel is located in the Grand Central area and not too far from Times Square, which makes this accessible for all families involved. As a former resident of Core Pro Services Red Lion Inn, I can tell you that this agency, this organization is not just about the money. Their staff members treated me with respect, honor, and dignity. Encourage recovery, provide referrals, and I believe that Core Pro Services is the right agency for this. And we should also, touching on what someone else said about taxing the rich, I do believe in that as well. So if we're going to look at shelters as an option, let's look at having providers that actually are about the work and actually care. Thank you.
And this concludes our public session speakers list.
All right, so thank you to all of our public speakers tonight. We hope you continue the conversation working with our board in partnership and at our committee meetings. So thank you very much. So we'll now move on to the adoption of the previous meeting's full board minutes. The minutes from the November 12th full board meeting were distributed to board members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom right now. All right, seeing no objections, the minutes from November 12th full board meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. So now I'm going to give a brief report. As I mentioned at our November full board meeting, one of my first priorities is to reorganize the board to make sure it's more efficient and also to make sure that we interact better in the public sphere and with the community as a whole. So at our executive committee meeting last month, I discussed with the chairs of our board some ideas I had to reorganize some of the committees that we had. So I'm just going to run through some of that housekeeping. So the first thing is the 197A Standing Committee, or the working group is no longer a working group. It is now a standing committee. We've renamed it to the Strategic Community Planning Committee and have appointed Wells Magali as the vice chair. Building on that, BASA, we have reformed that name to Business Affairs and Licensing to better reflect the work that it does. Health and Education has been renamed to Youth and Education. The Parks Committee is now Environment and Parks. It will still be overseeing cultural affairs and landmarks, but the rename is to better encapsulate the work that they're doing. And I've pulled out and created a new committee called Health and Human Services, which will be chaired by Elvie Barroso. I've tasked her with leading a lot of the outreach and partnership on the work on the vaccine and COVID-19 and working with our hospitals and other organizations within the community. So I want to congratulate all of the new leaders on our board and look forward to the work that we're going to do together. Next up, I'd like to discuss something that I hope to never discuss again, which is the letters that were received by members of this board last week. As many of you saw, I immediately put out a statement that, first of all, backed the work of our community board members, but more importantly, condemning actions like this. This is something that was not only cowardly, it's despicable. And when you send anonymous letters that target people and not an issue, it's absolutely disgusting, and there's no tolerance for that whatsoever. So I was very happy to see that immediately our local elected officials and just numerous people throughout the public stood in solidarity with our community board members. At the time, it was only a few. It has grown since then to a couple more. And so to see the solidarity that we've seen from our elected officials, particularly the borough president's office, who's been handling this and the legal work on it and elevating it appropriately, we want to send our thanks to them as well. But the larger statement that I want to make is that behavior like this will never be tolerated. You have the backing of your chair, you have the backing of your board staff, and you have the backing of the rest of the board and the community as well. And so as you go out and discuss tough issues, as you go out and create resolutions on tough issues, you should always feel comfortable to discuss those in an open, democratic process. So I want to thank the members who were unjustly targeted by this for the work that they have been leading and the work that they will continue to lead, and that they will always have the support of us behind them. And I was able to connect with each of them, and I'm happy to report that everyone is doing well and are stronger than ever and more committed to the work than ever before. In my conversations with them, I told them that this is a demonstration of the good trouble that they're getting in. So I appreciate all of that and their work. In the spirit of letters, you might have seen that we sent out a letter to DHS about the shelter issue in our district. This letter was specific about the issues that we saw in the fair share analysis. We saw discrepancies, we saw inconsistencies, and as a big part of their own decision-making process, we wanted to ensure that if we're following proper protocol, if we're following proper process, that the information and data must be up to date and accurate and reliable. And so we had a call earlier today that was spearheaded by Councilmember Power's office, where we brought together members of the community, we brought the relevant stakeholders, DHS, elected officials, and we're able to discuss the issues that we saw in this, and the public had their opportunity to discuss it with them as well. The big thing that I would like to highlight is that there are some inconsistencies in the way this issue is talked about. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, Community Board 6, and no community board for that matter, or elected official, actually has a say in this process. So the inconsistencies that we've seen in the harassing letters, the false information that CB6 made some decision on this matter is absolutely false. And the proposal for the shelter is that it will be renovated to address the needs of the individuals that are being served. So to think that it's remaining a hotel or in that capacity is also inaccurate. And the last thing I want to mention is that the letter also reestablishes our and reiterates our values to people who are in need, who are in support, and in this particular case, the homeless. As many of you know, serving on the community board, we do not just represent the housed in our district, we also represent the homeless and people who pass through this district as well. And so throughout our work, we are always going to maintain our values. We're always going to maintain the representation of all people and not just a select few. And that will always be the current of the work that we're doing. And so I want to make sure that that is on the record and that we are vocally saying that, and that was also included in the letter as well. And that we appreciate all the work for people on the ground who are working with these populations, who are working with people in need and providing them with the services they need. And that the community board is always open to people of all voices and to partnership. And one of the great things I think from what we heard earlier today is that everybody can agree and has offered partnership and has been on the record offering this partnership as well, that a lot of the work that needs to be done is on long-term sustainable solutions, particularly with affordable housing in our district and with social services that address root causes. And so I was happy to see that even people who are not happy about the selection of this particular site as a shelter are willing to partner up to ensure that we can increase affordable housing in our district and provide people with the appropriate services that they need. And so building on that, of course, we've heard about the time that we're in, the season, the holiday season. And so building on those two issues, I'd like to encourage everyone again, some people on the board have already done this, but for everyone to continue to make donations to our local temporary and permanent shelters. We have an email, donations@cbsix.org, where we can coordinate donations to the appropriate shelters. And this is in our weekly emails, it's on our website about what type of items are needed and great to donate to these shelters. This is the time where we really demonstrate compassion and giving, and we want to show that that's what we care about and what CB6 has always been about. So I want to thank everyone who's already done that and encourage everyone in this spirit of this holiday to continue to do so. And then last but not least, I want to remind everyone that applications for joining the community board are open. If you are up for renewal, you will receive an informative email from the board staff letting you know that you are up for renewal. And I also encourage everyone to inform people that people can join the community board as well. Of course, it is a competitive process, but I want to make sure that one of the things that I promised coming into this new leadership role was to really conduct outreach on engaging with communities and people who aren't necessarily represented on community boards, particularly with young people. We have high school slots that are open for people who are 16 or older. Want to make sure that we are encouraging our local youth to be engaged with this work as well as underrepresented communities. And so this is really the time to encourage people, to inform people, and I hope that you do so. And that is all that I have on my end for the report. So thank you.
And as far as the district manager's report, in the interest of time, since we've got a lengthy meeting, I'll waive my report tonight.
All right, thank you, Jesus. And next up, we have the treasurer's report.
My report's super brief. None of the numbers from last month have been changed. I'm just going to read out OTPS is 140,659. That figure contains 110,185 of our street fair money. We have a balance of 30,274 left of the remaining city money that we've given us. We have a normal drawdown of personal services budget, and we have prepaid our rent for the year. Does anybody have any questions?
All right.
All right.
Any questions? Thank you, Brian. So next up, we have the Borough President's report. Brian, are you there? Brian Lafferty, sorry, not the previous Brian.
I believe Gail already gave the report.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on from that. So we have now arrived at our committee reports. For each committee that appears before the screen, please deliver your report. And just to reiterate the ground rules that we had before, no one may speak until granted the floor. Board members, if you have a question or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. I can't see everyone's screen, so I can't see if you're physically raising a hand, so please do it through Zoom. Again, the chat function should not be used for board business, questions, or side conversations. Any remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom, and you should only use it to alert us of any technical difficulties that you're having. When a board member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you, and then votes for resolutions will be conducted by roll call. And lastly, again, we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of this meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So again, we are using a digital ballot. CB6 staff is going to post a link to the ballot in the chat. Please open this ballot, select your name from the list of board members, and select your vote on each resolution as it is presented. Do not hit submit until later in the evening after the final resolution has been presented. At the end of the meeting, once you have indicated all of your votes on your ballot, only then should you submit the ballot. You will not be able to submit the ballot unless you vote on every single resolution. If you plan on abstaining, please select abstain. And then final votes will be announced after the second roll call, so please stick around for that. And if any part of our voting procedure is unclear, please raise your hand through Zoom and we will address your question. So first up, we have health and education, or youth and education now, from John.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kyle. And first of all, I'd like to share the Health and Education Committee say I'm delighted with the change. It's something I actually lobbied for very soon after I became chair of the Health and Education Committee. So I'm delighted that we can have a greater focus in the committee. I'll be very brief because there has been so much turmoil in the schools that we could go on all night. But basically, the elementary schools are back now. Middle schools, he's going to try to get back sometime in January, and the chancellor last night said high schools will come back later. The things that are interesting right now to people are, what are the plans for admissions to middle schools and high schools, public schools? And the chancellor has said that he will let us know by the end of the year what that plan will be. And then the other question on people's minds is what's going to happen with the specialized high school admissions test, whether it's even going to be held. And last night at his town hall, which we announced at our committee meeting, the chancellor said that he's going to let the science be his guide as to whether there will be a specialized high school admissions test this year. I'm going to basically just stop there because what I want to do with the new committee as constituted is define a role for a community board education committee with so many different advocacy groups at work in the city right now. How can we distinguish ourselves and what unique value can we add is what I want to have on our agenda. So I'll stop there unless there are any questions.
All right, thank you, John. Are there any questions from the community board for John? All right, seeing none. Next up, we have the Strategic Community Planning Committee.
Thank you, Kyle, and thanks for the new name and the committee status. We had a really good meeting last week and discussed a lot of our ongoing work, mainly around the MSBI site and the Perlman Place website, which was launched or which was announced in the CB6 newsletter last week as well. We are going to be sending out some more announcements and targeted emails to elected officials, stakeholders, community organizations and such, and trying to organize a set of potentially collaborative and joint meetings going into the new year, which I'm working on. I'll be doing some outreach and hopefully working with you, Kyle, on that as well, on some strategy around that, and hoping to have issues and topics to focus on some of the things that came up today, especially with affordable housing and health needs will be main focuses of that. But that's all I really have to state for now. There's a lot more work to be done going into the new year.
All right, thank you, Kavitha. Are there any questions for Kavitha from the community board? All right, thank you. Seeing none, let's move on to budget and government affairs.
So we didn't have a meeting and will not have a meeting in December. The next meeting will be in January. It'll be chaired by Reshma Patel. So you can be guaranteed that it'll be shorter than any meeting that I would run. The last we talked, of course, it's up to Reshma what the agenda is going to be at that meeting. Last we talked, we were talking about the election experience and how that can be improved. Maybe we'll get some people in, rely on her involvement with the League of Women Voters and a variety of other sources. The other things that are coming up, though, are we're expecting adjustments to the adopted budget. So that would be adjustments to the budget in the current fiscal year. Could come before the end of this month. I think the hints are already coming out, whether they've been official or not. And then the preliminary budget for 2022 is scheduled for January 15th. Though we frequently see delays, it may not be till the end of that month. So we'll be talking again about the budget going forward. That preliminary budget is when they respond to our budget request that we made just recently. And the other topic we want to look into, whether we have time right now or in the next couple months or have to wait a little bit, is revenue sources. There was a recent independent budget office report on, and I think they do it every year, but they've expanded some ideas for how we can get revenue, which I think is something we've overlooked. We've always looked at what money we want to spend and not offer any suggestions on where we think the revenue could come from. The IBO is a particularly responsive organization, and they frequently will have people come to our meetings. So we hope to get to that probably February, March timeframe. And that's pretty much it. If you want to know more about January, you can contact Reshma. So that's it.
All right, thank you so much, Rick. Appreciate that. Next up, we have Business Affairs and Licensing. Hi, Claire, are you unmuted?
And the other thing
We can't hear Claire.
Can everyone mute their Zoom, please, for some background noise and comments? Claire, I think you're having an audio issue. Because it says you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Yeah. You know what we'll do? Let's just move on to the next committee, and then we'll come back once you've, maybe you want to log in and log out again, or log out, log in. We'll try that. Jesus, can we move on to the next? Yep, Housing, Homelessness, and Human Rights. Corinne.
Thank you, Kyle. I think housing and homeless has taken up plenty of time today. Sorry about that. Jeffrey Zellen, one of our public members, is and me worked on a resolution in support of the legislation that Councilmember Rivera just mentioned called COPA, and I am going to give the floor to Jeffrey to talk about a little bit more. And this both A and B kind of fit together, and Jeffrey will explain why.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Corinne. As Councilwoman Rivera mentioned earlier this evening, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, otherwise known as COPA, would provide qualified nonprofit affordable housing developers such as community land trusts, CLTs, to have a right of first refusal by requiring building owners to notify HPD and a list of qualified entities when their buildings will be listed for sale, at which time these entities would have the opportunity to submit a first offer and then an opportunity to match any higher competing offer. This statutory right of first refusal would also help these nonprofits and CLTs by providing them additional time to secure and develop the funding necessary to make these competitive bids. This resolution, which I guess is not up, are we putting it up, or it's just that the members have the resolutions before them?
The resolutions were sent ahead of time.
Okay.
To board members.
Thanks, Cody. And this resolution urges the City Council to pass and the mayor to sign the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And just to confirm, it would still be a competitive bid, correct?
Correct. So this provides a right of first refusal and a right to match. It gives them advance notice. It gives them a right to make a first bid, but the market will still be able to proceed as it would, with the caveat that the CLTs and nonprofits would have a right to match the highest bid. If the market is such that that's not feasible, then the market will, take its course. But it does at least allow a right of first refusal and a right to match the highest competitive bidder.
Great, thanks. And you want to explain B and how it ties in with A?
Or before we go to B, because we have to vote on these singularly, are there any questions for Jeff or Corinne on 5A? Jim, I see your hand up.
Yeah, notwithstanding the good intention behind this resolution, I swore an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of New York State. And both of those have an equal protection clause. And that equal protection clause applies not only to individuals, it also applies to corporations, because as Mitt Romney once told us, corporations are people as well. I don't understand why these community land trusts or anyone else should have a right of first refusal given by legislative fiat. I think it's unconstitutional on its face. And I'm not an attorney, but if anyone, were to look at the plain language of the New York State Constitution, it would seem to violate the state constitution as well as the federal.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Jim.
I won't be voting for it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on 5A? Because we do have to vote on this before moving on to 5B. So if anyone wants to call to question or make a motion on 5A, please do so.
I'll call the question.
All right, call the question by Jean. That's seconded by anyone?
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, I can hear you, Claire.
Yay.
Are you seconding? Okay. All right, so we will now be taking a vote. So please mark your vote on your digital ballot for this resolution, and please do not hit submit. So those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. So please take a couple of seconds for that. And as they're doing that, Corinne, and Jeff, do you want to talk about 5B?
Sure. 5B is a resolution supporting the expiration and non-renewal of a law authorizing annual tax liens sales. In 1996, the city enacted a tax lien sales law enabling the Department of Finance to collect tax revenue by selling liens and unpaid property, water and municipal taxes. The sales occur annually, although this year, due to COVID, the 2020 sale was postponed multiple times. As I understand it, has not happened in 2020. The law expires at the end of this year. And the thought behind allowing it to expire is that once the way it works is that the tax liens are sold to a private trust, and then the private trust, which is managed by Bank of New York Mellon, then it becomes part of private investors, and they the fear is that it can charge interest of up to 18%, and that it has a disproportionate adverse effect on smaller properties and smaller income earners. About half of the properties of several thousand properties, about half of them are 1 to 3 family homes, and disproportionately of those are neighborhoods of color. The caveat here, though, is that at the time, just as a matter of disclosure, should mention that when the committee did vote on this, there was no bill that had been offered by the city council in relation to a reauthorization of this law. That has happened actually yesterday, and actually today, I think, this afternoon. So there is a law that, with regard to reauthorization, it's in committee, and my understanding is that from what I've read so far, that there are portions of the new reauthorization law that would attempt to address some aspects of the adverse effect on lower income. It would prevent the sale of the tax liens on qualified for households with less than $150,000 in income, with the value of the housing of less than $250,000 would not be eligible for sale in the first year. But one of the in support of the allowing it to expire has been for an example of the CLT that had been mentioned, I think, earlier. Cooper Square had purchased in the early 90s, before the enactment of the tax lien sales law, had been able to purchase numerous buildings in the Bowery area, and from foreclosures from tax liens. And this, by allowing this to expire, the hope is that this would allow organizations like the CLTs to continue to do that, which they have not been able to do as significantly.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Very thorough. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Corinne or Jeff on this? Anne, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a minor sort of technical thing, which, notwithstanding whatever the city might do, I'm not going to wait and hope that comes out okay. I just noticed that in the where. Oh.
Hi, Anne, you just went on mute.
In the where, or in the resolved, there's a word missing, and I hang on myself so I can look at it.
And you keep going in and out of mute, just so you know. Sorry.
I should be unmuted now, right?
Yeah.
In the whereas, it is missing a phrase. It's after it needs to echo. It should be, it's missing, instead of, it just says supports and urges the city council. I think we want to say supports the expiration and urges the city council to not renew, which echoes the name of it. And otherwise the word supports is just kind of hanging there.
Yeah, and also I would, with regard to verbiage, now that there is a reauthorization bill, and I don't know what the proper procedure is, so forgive me.
Yeah.
You know, it essentially would be to urge to not pass the Reauthorization Act, which at the time that we had drafted this had not existed. And the point is well taken regarding the supports. It probably need a
I think we just, I think somehow that language needs to match more what we're saying, particularly in light of this new news. I don't think it changes the sense of the reso so fully that it, it can't be voted on, but sorry, I'm an editor. Like that's.
No, thank you, Anne. I mean, can I, as the chair, make a motion to change the last therefore? Or do I have to wait for another member to do that? Because I agree, we could change that. Not quite sure about the procedure here.
Could you give us more clarity? If it's a edit rather than a change in purpose, does that need to be motion on that?
We could submit, if you could submit the new wording in writing, that'll be fine. And maybe just a quick vote through hands on Zoom, just to cover our bases.
From our committee?
No, from the board.
From the board, okay.
But first, can the exact language be stated for the record?
Well, if you can allow me a question. So, Anne, what was the suggestion regarding the language supports?
Until I knew about what you just said, I would have said supporting the expiration and non-renewal. But since we don't know that it's not going to expire because the reauthorization hasn't passed.
Right. So maybe we should just leave that, but just do the edit, your edit, and
right, because and that also makes it echo the name of the resolution, which is, I think, always a sort of useful thing.
Yes. Thank you.
So the entry of the words the expiration and urges, that. Yeah.
Expiration of supports the expiration. I'm sorry.
No. I think you're right. It probably would be supports the expiration of, comma, and urges the city council not to renew.
Yeah.
Comma, the tax lien. Would that be?
I have no problem with the split infinitive, however.
So this is B. Can I just raise the point of information?
Granted.
So I would assume what Ann just said and what we just did was a friendly amendment. And if the committee takes it, you don't really have to vote on that addition.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right. Is that right,
That's
Kyle?
what we're gonna do, correct?
Technically, no. Once it's been presented to the board as a resolution, it no longer is the property of the committee, it's the property of the board. So only the board can make the amendment. But it's been our policy to allow such edits. So, I mean, take your choice.
Well, I'm happy to make a motion to make a friendly amendment, and maybe it doesn't have to, be a whole vote. It can be if there's any objection to this, the way we do adoption of the minutes and stuff.
You read my mind, Ann.
All right.
Okay, so Ann has made a motion to a friendly amendment.
I second it.
And seconded by Brian. If anybody objects to that, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. So is there a call to question?
Isn't necessary.
Oh, thank you, Rick. No, it's okay. I appreciate it.
You may go, if there are no further questions, you may go directly to the vote without asking for the call to the question.
Okay, perfect. So let's just call this to vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we did some research, and there's about 30 properties that would fall under this tax lien sale right now, unless there's an intervention. And one of them is an empty lot on 2nd Avenue and 36th and 37th. And again, with the COPA law, that would be kind of a perfect location for affordable senior housing as opposed to market rate housing.
All right, thank you, Corinne.
Can
Right.
I?
Rick, yeah,
I think I have my hand up. What troubles me is the whereas it says the properties on the lien sale could create a pipeline of properties that could be directed towards permanently affordable housing. So there's no guarantee that anything that comes of this is actually going to go to affordable housing.
Yes.
How do we make, has that been considered, and what did the committee think of that?
Well, I think that's where the COPA law comes in. That's where it ties in with A, where then affordable housing providers would have first right of refusal. I mean, you can't guarantee it. I mean, this is land, the land of the free, and you can't just kind of take a piece of land and do with what you wish. So, but just because we want it to be affordable housing, I mean, that needs to. Definitely together with A, which, by the way, I noticed that Katie from Rivera's office offered to address Jim's question or concern at any time that he wants to do.
I'm happy to hear it now.
I mean, I don't know it. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not a legislative nor a constitutional lawyer. But I think that's why A and B kind of tie in together. But there's obviously no guarantee. It's just that it's almost, assured that it goes for a cutthroat market rate investor who has, if it gets sold in auction.
There also was, I guess, anecdotally, that the observation that the CLTs like Cooper Square have been able to buy a large number, as I understand it, I think it was in the number like 30 or something properties in the early 90s in the Bowery that were foreclosure properties, and they, as I understand it, had not done that since, and the CLTs have indicated that is part of the reason. But true, that's somewhat anecdotal and not guaranteed, but there is the sense that this would provide a potential pipeline for those types of organizations.
Kyle, could we get a recapitulation on how to get to the ballot to vote? Because I'm not seeing that.
Sure. So the board staff just re-entered the link into the chat function. So you should either be able to click on it, or you might have to copy and paste it depending on the computer and browser you have. So please put that into your browser. The ballot should open up for you.
Sorry, Kyle, could we get a reading of what the final language was that was edited?
Sure. Jesus, can we pull that up?
Coming up.
As edited.
So
I need my magnifiers.
sorry, I can read it out loud for you.
The expiration.
So it now says, therefore be it resolved that Manhattan Community Board supports the expiration of and urges the city council to not renew the tax lien sales law.
What happens to the property if it's not sold? If you can't sell it for a tax lien, what happens to the property? What's the next step? Somebody else?
Morning.
The city retains ownership of it as it does prior to the lien sale, and ultimately the city would essentially foreclose on the property as part of its tax collection process. But the thought is that the city it allows the property owner, tax ower, greater opportunity to work out a payment deal with the city than it would once the sale commences.
I was under the impression that they would not so much foreclose as that they would put a lien on the property so that the owner could not sell it without clearing the lien. But I don't know for sure. Is that not correct?
My understanding is, and I'll admit I'm not an expert in that regard, but my understanding is that ultimately this would lead to a foreclosure, potentially a foreclosure proceeding for the unpaid taxes.
All right. I see there are some other hands up, so I do want to get to that. B, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think we've had a discussion. I'd like to call the question.
Second.
Was that seconded by Adam?
Yep.
All right, seconded by Adam. All right, so we'll now move to a vote. So please go to your digital ballot. We're on 5B. We had to skip 4. So please, your previous vote should have been on 5A. We're currently voting on 5B. So please mark.
Don't have the digital ballot.
Are you on? Did you were you able to click on the link or copy and paste the link into your browser? It should be in the chat function. So I'll work with Lou on this, but for everyone else who has it open, please mark your vote on the digital ballot for this resolution, but do not hit submit. And those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. So please take time for that. And Lou, you should, in the chat box on Zoom, if you click chat so you can see the comments that are being made, there should be a link that the board staff has sent out. It's the most recent chat. And you should be able to click on it. It's an Airtable, or you should be able to copy and paste it into your browser.
We can ask Lou his vote at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if worse comes to worse, we'll just we'll do it verbally at the end.
Fair enough.
Perfect. So in the interim, let's go back to business affairs and licensing. So that is items 4. And
Can you all hear me now?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, sorry. 9 months into this, you would think I would have my audio sorted. Sorry about that, and thank you for coming back to me. So we had a pretty brief meeting, which was great. We saw 2 businesses. They presented about their new licenses. You see the resolutions in our digital packet. If anyone has any questions, thank you, Kyle. Welcome back to doing resolutions. Thanks to Kyle for doing those, but does anyone have any questions about either of those?
And I see your hand up. Oh, was your hand not up, or?
It was up, but it's about C, and it's
Oh, okay.
like literally a 1-word typo.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just do A and B for now. And also, by the way, I noticed, everybody, that now that we have a new chair, we don't say bundle anymore. So
I know, I was waiting for someone to say it, but I kind of bundled myself. So don't worry about it, everyone.
It's hard to do on Zoom, but I'll try to resume it.
Thank you. Looking forward to that walk up to the podium.
Seeing no questions, I'm going to move it to a vote.
Wonderful.
So everybody, this is for 4A and for 4B. Please mark your vote on your digital ballot for this resolution, but do not hit submit. And those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. While they do that, you want to talk about 4C?
Yes, so this actually came out from a member of the public who joined our last full board meeting. If you all remember, Daniela Schill came to talk about this bill. So she just kind of elaborated a little bit more to our committee. And thanks, Jeannie, for writing this resolution. I don't know if there's anything that she wanted to add, or Anne, you had a question.
Yeah, it's just a typo. It's even smaller than the last one. In the
typo's too small.
It's in the fifth whereas. It says subject to rules set but the feds, and I think that's just supposed to be set by. Just
okay. Yep, we'll make that change. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Anne, for your fine tooth comb.
Right, seeing no further questions, I'm going to move it to a vote.
Wonderful.
So please return to your digital ballot and go to 4C. And please mark your vote on your digital ballot for this resolution. Do not hit submit.
I'm sorry, I'm having a technical thing. Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Of course, Rick.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I should know better. I agree. I should know better by now. What I don't understand is the resolve says that you're urging our congressional representatives to support state bills. And I don't get that. I don't think that's a proper resolution format. And there's also, I think, in paragraph, no, that's on 4C. It was just, I don't understand who this is being directed to and what action they can actually take, I guess is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, so this is there are two separate bills, the state Senate bill and the state assembly bill. So we're urging our representatives, I guess.
Well, if you're urging our state representatives, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's stated that we're urging our congressional representatives.
So we should change it to the state representatives.
Okay, if what you're saying, yeah, if that's what you intend, that's
Yes.
fine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
or should it? You're absolutely right, Rick. But should it include both the federal and the state level, since there is federal legislation?
Only if the federal legislation is noted.
Yes, it is in the next to last whereas.
Okay.
Can we say elected representatives? Wouldn't that
Yes.
cover everything?
Yes.
Good suggestion, Sandy. Our elected representatives. Perfect. Thank you, Cody, for doing this. So I guess we're voting as amended, which are those two small changes on the resolution. Thank you.
That language be changed to members of the Assembly and the New York State Senate to support.
So I think, Lou, that they just did it collectively as elected representatives rather than highlighting one specific or the other.
But
Members of the congressional delegation have only the same impact on this as any other citizen. That we're urging our elected representatives in Albany to a particular course of action. I think we ought to focus our point of view to them.
Okay, so yeah, so just to tidy this up. So in the resolve, if we're talking just about state Senate legislation, it should only be the state Senate. But if we're also asking them to do, S3697 and HR 6688, that we should include that in the resolve as well. So it would be something to the effect of urges our
Members of the Assembly and of the New York State Senate.
to support S7290 and 8764, as well as our congressional representatives to support the previously mentioned bills. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Leave the congressional delegation out of it because it distracts from the point of what we're doing. We're calling for state action by the Assembly and the New York State Senate. So we ought to focus our resolution to them specifically.
No, I agree, Lou, but I'm asking them if they had meant to also include the federal legislation as part of the resolve, which is what I'm trying to get some clarity on.
Hi, this is Jeannie. I wrote the resolution. I would strike congressional.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jeannie.
So, yeah, I think, but then we have to say our state representatives.
Exactly, as Lou stated.
Yep.
Members of the Assembly and of the New York State Senate.
That's
So
good.
I need to add a clarifying question, it's B, because SNAP is a federal program. And it looks like there was legislation introduced in the Senate and the House. It doesn't say that it was passed. So do you need that enabling legislation to do anything in the state?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The federal government issues the establishment of federal guidelines for SNAP, okay? And the bill says, your resolution says that there's a Senate version and a House version. It doesn't say that it was enacted. So my question is, before you can enact something on the state level, do you need federal legislation?
No, this is separate from that. So the federal funds SNAP. The state does have administrative expenses the state funds the administrative costs, and they can make some decisions such as expanding into using SNAP for restaurants. So it's a separate legislative act on a state level.
Without federal legislation?
Without federal legislation, although there is some federal legislation about this. I didn't study it, but there is some federal legislation about the specific act, about the expansion. But we were looking into the state level rather than federal.
No, I understand that. I'm just questioning state authorities and without federal backing.
They could do it. Right now, there are 3 states that have already passed this. So New York would be the 4th.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I was just wanting to make sure we were within the structure of the SNAP program.
All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to move it to a vote. So everybody please go to 4C on your digital ballot. Mark your vote on this digital ballot for this resolution, but do not hit submit. And those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. All right, and Claire, do you have a report?
I am tired and going to waive my report tonight.
Great. Thank you for that early holiday present. Next up, we have land use. Adam.
Everybody, good evening. We have one item that we'll be voting on this evening. It is a resolution of objection to the proposed zoning for the Coastal Resiliency Citywide Zoning Text Amendment, otherwise known as a ULURP number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's on the ballot presented by Department of City Planning. So this was an item that we were supposed to hear back in the spring, I believe, but it was delayed until the fall due to the ULURP pause. In short, Department of City Planning has proposed an amendment to update and make permanent the temporary 2013 flood resiliency zoning text amendment to encourage long-term resilient design across the city's 1% annual floodplain and expand it to allow buildings that are in the 0.2% annual chance floodplain. This is a citywide amendment and applies general lessons learned that DCP has learned, essentially the 8+ years since Sandy. And their general outreach and other sorts of communication efforts during that time. And so DCP presented to our committee in a public hearing on November 23rd. This was our first digital ULURP, answering questions directly related to the impacts that we had here in CB6, which are in the resolution before you. As a point of order, after the hearing, the committee voted on the resolution of no objection unless. And so this is pretty standard. We've done this in the past on previous sort of resolutions, no objection unless, and then we list our sort of issues. But however, you know, the authors of this resolution, you know, getting more information from our land use consultant, George Janes, and, you know, other sorts of research, basically we've decided that, you know, it's better to be sort of to change the box of which we'll be checking. And so that's the object unless. And so with that said, that this is a second sterner language that allows for our concerns to sort of be elevated more in the resolution and in the text. And so with that said, we'll need to we'll need to make a motion to bring this resolution, the one before you, to the board, or excuse me, to the floor to vote on.
All right, so is there a motion?
I'll call the question.
All right. Thanks, Jean.
Second.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. Who seconded it? I heard Jean and then I'm not sure.
B.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's move it to a vote. So please go to your digital ballot. Please mark your vote on your digital ballot for 6A and do not hit submit. Again, those of you who are not using the digital ballot will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. Do you want to continue with the report, Adam?
Yes, please. I'll be very brief. I'd like to thank, with the recent resolution that you've voted on but not submitted, I'd like to thank the authors of Sandro, of Kavitha, of Sandy, and the editor Anne, and the work from Cody and George Janes. You know, this was the first ULURP we've had in some time, and you know, they really sort of rose to the occasion, and they really dug deep and did their homework, and it really presents itself within the resolution. So thank you very much for all your hard work. So at the meeting, there was another item that we spent. So in addition to the public hearing, we also got an update on ESCR. And so this feels like a lifetime ago, but it was only 2 weeks ago. So we have good news this evening. Chris Collins from Solar One sent us an email. And so in short, they've reached an agreement with EDC that allows DDC to access the Solar One site, and then also provides an additional funding of $9.4 million moving forward with their building. And so basically what this means is that EDC is going to hope to start demolition of the building, I think in 2021, and their staff will then move into a trailer and maintain sort of their presence in the park during construction. And so again, I'd like to thank the board, or excuse me, I'd like to thank the members of the committee for really, specifically Larry, for really pushing this issue. And it's glad to see that there's a resolution of that, and, you know, especially in favor of, you know, great allies in Solar One. Additional ESCR news. Thought Gene would have went first, and so he would have spoke to most of it, but instead I get to steal some of the thunder. So anyway, we had updates from the team, and if you're not aware, they've begun construction, you know, around the Solar One site, and they're going to begin construction in earnest throughout the mega site as well. And so you're going to see updates both in physical signage and stuff like that, if not already, but very, very soon. And this is around Solar One and other sorts of things. And so the good news here is that, you know, our friends at Waterside and the electeds helped push to make sure that Astor Levy, the track around Astor Levy, will remain open for the immediate future, which is great. And so with the mitigations and the construction and the other sorts of things, if you haven't already signed up to receive alerts about this big project, I encourage you to do so on the ESCR website. They send out weekly updates to kind of let you know what's going on. We provided comment and feedback, which Gene will speak more in his report. But if there's any issues that you see, you know, please alert the board office, and we'll work with the project team to provide further clarity. Long and short is that, you know, it's a bumpy ride, and it's only been 3 weeks in, and there's already been some communication issues. So we're all in this together, and we'll sort of get through it the best we can. Two other things one other thing for our meeting next month. Helicopters, the borough president spoke to this earlier in the meeting. You know, we hope to address this in potentially in our January meeting. And with that said, we're not having a December meeting. We'll be meeting in January. So thank you all for your time, and wishing you and your family very happy holidays.
All right, thank you, Adam. I see a question from Jim.
Yeah, Kyle, just as I had meant it to raise it as a point of order. It's actually now a point of information since we already did it. Once a committee submits a resolution for passage, there's no need for anyone to introduce it or to call a second on it. That's been our practice in prior years. So there's, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so thank you, Adam. Let's move on to transportation.
Okay, it's been a really long meeting, so why don't we just skip this part? No, I guess not, huh? All right. I'm sorry about the complexity of the reso that you people have before you, but it follows from what Adam was saying. Some of us have been working on ESCR for 4 and 5 years now, but the agencies that are involved in this project have not, because things changed drastically about 2 years ago and everything went by the boards that we've been working on. And so basically, in a lot of ways, DDC and DOT, which are the lead agencies on a lot of this, are playing catch up, which means we're playing catch up with them. So a lot of the 2.5-hour meeting that we spent, that the committee heroically suffered through and asked pointed questions about during, is about that catch up. And the Avenue C bike lane that you've got in front of you is a small part of that. The reso is obviously not just about that. It's about the expanded detour and possibilities for ways to get people to get past, bikers, pedestrians, joggers, to get past the construction as it moves through its different phases. We know very little about how that's going to work actually yet. The first phase is already unfolding before us. As Adam said, the northern half of Sty Cove Park has been taken over by DDC's contractor. Pedestrians and bikers can still sort of squeeze through, but the bikes will be prohibited nominally from going through there as of next week, according to what they told us at our meeting on Monday. This is the example of how little notice we're getting about how things are happening. So the pushback from the committee about this was sustained and strong. DOT and DDC both heard the message. They've already modified stuff. This Avenue C bike lane was something that got pushed forward, let's say, as a result of the pressure that's been exerted. I'll also share that on Friday before the Transportation Committee meeting, I had a meeting with DOT and the management of Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper. And the management expressed their support for the positions that we laid out in this reso. They also were disturbed by the fact that there was very little concrete mitigation, and that what mitigation there is sending people very far west to get around this situation. Their fears include, like ours, include stuff like, bikers will get to the 23rd Street and suddenly start cascading down the sidewalk on Avenue C, which already has 2 bus stops, and people use it. So we need to straighten this out, and we will. Eventually. It's going to take some time, but they're already moving. There's movement to put in, as you see from the complicated reso, movement to put in an extension for the bike lane on Avenue C to 20th Street, which at least connects people up to a 2-way protected bike lane there. We urged DOT to expand their map for the detour to include already protected bike lane streets like 12th and 13th Street in the East Village, rather than sending people down Houston Street where there is no protected bike lane as yet. They're going to build one in the spring. So it's a lot of moving parts. We're trying to stay on top of it. And we're basically trying to get ahead of the bus instead of constantly being behind it. And I think more and more they are cooperating with us, reluctantly at first, but they're now engaging us. So I think we'll have at least some success. It's not going to happen right away. We'll get pieces of it before the spring, but because of weather and everything else and planning, it's going to take probably until the spring for these pieces to come together. The weather will help us avoid a lot of the key problems that way, hopefully, because the usage of the shorefront will probably drop during the winter, especially once we start to get snow, if we do. So that's the outlook on that. Are there any questions about the reso? I know it's complicated again. I'm sorry. I want to thank Sandy for doing heroic labors on the first draft of this. We had the meeting Monday night. She got me the reso draft on Tuesday night, and I got it to Brendan this morning. So the committee also, like I said, 2.5 hours worth of intense debate and questioning and a terrific performance. So, want to thank everybody for that. Any questions?
All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so let's just move it to a vote. So everybody, please go to your digital ballot for this resolution. This is 7A. And make your mark for this digital ballot and do not hit submit. Again, if you're using the digital ballot, we'll ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. All right, so as people do that, do you have a report, Gene?
In a second. I have to vote.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I do. The ever popular sinkhole is actually moving along according to schedule. They plan to finish it by the end of the year. They seem to be on target. I spoke to the foreman of the construction crew last week, and he said they were fine. The MTA bus line is back running as of early last week. So the people at Waterside are happy. They can now get places without having to go way out of their way and find a bus stop. So that's good. And that's really about it for the report. Let me just mention that upcoming things that we have that we're going to be looking at, because we are the public realm that Gail Brewer mentioned. We have a lot to do with that. So you heard 3rd Avenue come up. We're going to be looking at ways to try to repurpose either a parking lane or a travel lane on 3rd Avenue to use as an extended sidewalk between roughly 26th Street and 32nd Street, because the number of restaurants there and the number of pedestrians there clash. The sidewalks are too narrow to handle both things. People are crowded. They feel intimidated. We need to get them more space. 3rd Avenue does not need all the travel lanes or parking lanes that it has. So we'll be looking at both sides of the street, trying to figure out which one works better, and figure out what we can do to give people an additional space, especially during COVID, especially to get to restaurants, especially just to get around the neighborhood while people are enjoying eating out. We've got DDC and DOT, of course, coming back in January to present us the update, because we're like land use. We're going to have them in every month until we get on the same page and figure out what's going on. And they've been kind enough to agree to that. And we're going to be looking at stuff like the Whole Foods on 57th Street. One downtown just started doing cargo bike deliveries instead of trucks. And we'll be looking at ways to facilitate that, and also examine, while we're doing that, whether we can talk about how the folks are paid, have them have training to use the cargo bikes, stuff like that. It's ancillary issues that aren't so ancillary for the people who use our streets. So we've got that kind of thing going on. And then there are easier lifts, like supporting Brad Hoylman's bill to give the city a little more home rule about speed limits and things like that. And audio enhanced pedestrian signals for people who have sighted difficulties, especially around the hospital zones. This is something that DOT is starting to roll out, and we want to jump on it as quickly as possible because they're necessary, especially starting in those zones. So we'll be looking at a range of things like that. If you're interested, come on by. Last time we had about 80 people signed up for the meeting. So, you know, we encourage big crowds. Thanks. You got to unmute yourself, Kyle.
No, I see. Yeah. Thank you, Gene. I was just going to say that I think you need to focus on more things. But I appreciate it.
Not all going to happen next month. This is for.
Let's move on to parks.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, let's start in the Stuyvesant Square Historic District. Let's see, 238 East 15th Street. To a townhouse. This used to serve as the home to the Catholic Missionary Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The resolution you see, crafted by Reshma Patel, is of no objection to a restoration of the front facade of this townhouse and a new rooftop addition not visible beyond 250 feet from the townhouse, and a replacement of a wire railing. Not part of this resolution, but fun fact, inside the home, there will be a pool in this restoration.
Call the question.
Yes.
All right. Just seeing no questions, let's move to our ballot. So please go to your digital ballot and mark your vote for this resolution. This is 8A. And do not hit submit. And again, if you're using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second call. All right. And then Kevin, you can start to talk about 8B.
This is 211 East 48th Street, otherwise known as the Lascaz House. This is a former studio and a residence of architect William Lascaz. That's known as our city's first modern structure, residence, I should say, first modern residence. With this home, Lascaz was the first in New York to build a home with glass blocks, in part to make the home more fuel efficient. We present this resolution of no objection. Wordsmith by Mark Thompson for a certificate of appropriateness for interior and exterior modification. Proposal includes restoration of the building surfaces and removal of small non-original rooftop elements. The existing terraces in the rear yard will be altered to remove non-original material while reusing some original elements. And the rear facade will be pushed back approximately 6 feet to add additional interior space. It's said to resemble a grand piano. Alterations would not be visible from any public thoroughfare and would make the property more functionable for the new owners, or functional. By the way, all 11 committee votes were in favor of this.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move it to a vote. So everybody, please go back to your digital ballot for this resolution. This is 8B. Please make your mark. Please review all of your votes that you have indicated a vote, and now you can hit submit. Once you are done with it.
Oh, now we can.
Now you can, yeah. And Kevin, do you want to, do you have a report to share while people are?
Very brief. The long unused $800,000 allocation from then council member Mendez to renovate the Albano Playground on 2nd Avenue and 29th Street. The MTA had later rejected that renovation request, but council member Rivera's office reports, drum roll, that the project is moving through the MTA channels and should be resolved. Discussions will recommence with the City Parks Department. Happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so everyone please continue to finalize your ballots and submit those. Do any members of the board have old or new business? If you do, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I do have some words that I would like to say. This is our last meeting of 2020. We began this year sitting next to each other and doing board business, and we're concluding it on Zoom. And obviously the world has changed, our city has changed, our neighborhoods have changed. And so I want to first and foremost thank the board staff for all of the work that they have done. It borders on miraculous, if not miraculous itself, to be able to transfer all of this work remotely, to continue these conversations and our efforts seamlessly as we've continued to remote programming. And so I want to first and foremost thank them. I also want to thank the board leadership, the previous executive committee, as well as the current executive committee that has come into leadership for all of the great work that everyone has done through this entire pandemic. And then of course, each and every one of you. This pandemic has affected each and every one of us in ways that, we can never fully express or quantify or describe. And so to continue this work of being part of this community board, of focusing on the future of our district, to remain optimistic in times that are pessimistic, really speaks a lot to the character and devotion and commitment of each and every one of us. And so I want to thank all of you for continuing the work. It has not been easy, but we have continued to do it. We've continued to focus on people in need. We've continued to demonstrate our values. And I think that is a remarkable thing. I think that is the definition of a community board. And so as we conclude the year, I want everybody to take the time to rest, to re-energize, and to take time for the things that need to be taken time for. As we begin in 2021, we're going to hit the ground running. There's a lot for us to do, as we've heard from all of the committee chairs. and of all the issues that we faced. And so, I'm looking forward to that energy. I'm looking forward to that passion. I'm proud to lead the board in that charge and take the time at the same time to reach out to one another. Normally we would have had some sort of holiday celebration at the board office around this time. I talked about it with the board staff to see if we could do something virtually, figure that everybody's doing something virtually, whether it's work or, any other engagements that we have, and figured the best way is to hope for the best next year and do something in person once things finally settle down and hopefully get better. But in that meantime, I hope that everyone continues to reach out to one another for partnership, to check in on one another, because as I mentioned, this district, this board is home for us, and that means that each of us is family. And so let's take care of it. Let's support each other and move forward together. And I just want to thank everybody and express that in the holiday season as we wind down the year. All right. So has everyone submitted their ballot? Now Seema will continue with the second roll call. So members, please stay on the line.
Hi, everyone. If you have not submitted your ballot, let me know, and I'm happy to take your votes on the phone, on the Zoom. Kyle?
Present, and I'm submitting my ballot.
Okay. Asia Badi?
Present.
And Martin Barrett?
Present.
LB Barroso?
Present.
Joan Barenbaum? Joan? I think I saw you here. All right. Matt Bondi? Matt?
Sorry about that.
Okay, sounds good. Claire Brennan?
I'm here.
Jim Collins?
Here.
Dan Devine?
Present.
Jim, I do not see a ballot submitted.
Yeah, I'm sending it right now.
Okay, great. Beatrice Dismond?
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio?
Here.
Rick Eggers?
Here.
Charles Fernandez?
Here.
Andrew Gross? Okay.
You have my ballot, Collins.
Got it. I see it. Thank you. Adam Hartke?
Here.
Molly Hollister?
Here.
Paige Judge?
Here.
Yusuf Khalid? Yusuf? John Keller?
Present.
Abigail Cruzmark?
Present.
Anton Malner?
Here.
Kavita Matthew?
Here.
And Sandra McKee?
Here.
Wells McGauley?
Here.
Richard Mintz?
Here.
Rajesh Nair?
Present.
Kevin O'Keefe?
Present.
Rishma Patel?
Sorry. Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts?
Yeah, I'm here.
Gene Santoro?
Here.
Frank's not here. Lawrence Scher?
Present.
Ann Seligman? Ann? I believe Ann is here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know why spacebar didn't work.
Okay, great. Lou Sapersky?
Here, present. Yo,
Lou, do you need any help filling out your ballot, or have you submitted?
I think I submitted it correctly.
Perfect.
You may have-
Perfect. I think I see it. Thank you. Sean Sherman?
Present.
Sandra Gerard? Sandra? Oh yeah, he's not here. Sorry about that, guys. Letty Simon?
Present and Happy New Year, everybody.
You too. Susan Steinberg?
Here.
Anjut Suresh?
Here.
Mark Thompson?
Here.
Corinne Vanderdonk?
Here.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven?
Present.
Ronnie White? And then before I actually call Claude, I do have a question about Jim. I think you potentially might have mistaken your ballot. I think you submitted 2 responses for one of the questions.
I don't know.
It's 5B. Jim selected 2 options. If Jim wants to
I'm
clarify.
in favor.
No, Jim Collins.
Just for Jim Collins.
Not you, Claude. Jim?
What was 5B?
5B was on the lien sale.
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Okay, you selected opposed and abstain, so I'm removing abstain.
Oh, no, actually, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I did make it abstain. Pardon me, I forgot. Yes.
Okay.
Abstain.
That's been recorded. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Claude Winfield, just to close out, roll call.
I'm here.
Present. Great, and I'm happy to give the vote count. So for 4A, that vote passes 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstained, 0 not entitled. 4B, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 not entitled. 4C, 39 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 abstentions, 0 not entitled. So sorry, all 3 of those pass. 5A, 32 in favor, 5 opposed, 4 abstentions, 0 not entitled. That ballot passes. 5B, 32 in favor, 3 opposed, 6 abstentions, and 0 not entitled. That passes. 6A, 38 in favor, 1 opposed, 2 abstentions, 0 not entitled. That passes. 7A, 40 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 1 not entitled. That passes. 8A, 40 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstained, 0 not entitled. That passes. And finally, 8B, 40 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, 0 not entitled. That vote passes. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Seema.
Happy New Year. Good
So
holidays.
if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 10:02 p.m. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year. It was
Happy holidays.